Hi, everyone. Before we get to the show today, we do just want to acknowledge what is happening over in America right now and say that we stand with the black community and the protesters against racism and police brutality.
This is an international issue, so we'd also like to acknowledge that these problems exist in New Zealand as well, and we want to do what we can to help and hear the voices of those most affected.
While our platform is small, we didn't feel right pretending that everything is okay while we talk about our stupid movies and laugh like a couple of chumps. We're going to be donating our previous month's income from our Patreon, which is about $300 New Zealand, to the Act Blue bailout, which will split the money across 70 plus community bailout funds, mutual aid funds, and racial justice organisers in the USA.
We'll leave a link to this fund in the show notes below, and we encourage you to also give what you can. Richard, what do you think? What do you think is the point of your average Friday the 13th movie plot?
The tip of Jason's machete.
Very good, because watching them in a time where most horror movies, like the modern horror movie answer to Friday the 13th, is something that's filled with some kind of social commentary, and the main villain is like a metaphor for the struggle that the teen heroes has been trying to overcome. You know, maybe it's the death of a family member or grief or something metaphysical, right? But you don't really see any of that in the Friday the 13th plots. And so I was thinking about this, and do you think that the point is you're supposed to watch these stupid little teen soap opera dramas and then Jason just murders them all? Because that's very funny. And if that's the point, then I can get behind that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you've you've gone straight past most of the chat of this podcast, and you've skipped right to the end, where we would discuss the general themes. But what is this podcast?
Well, this podcast is the Cult Popture podcast, and specifically this is Film Franchise Fortnights. On the Cult Popture podcast, where usually what we do is we watch an entire film franchise for the first time, and then we come here and we discuss all the entries in that franchise. However, we've watched this one before.
Yeah, we have. So, if it's your first time joining us, that's the sort of idea of this podcast. But, hey, thanks for finally joining us. It only took 4 years.
5 seasons.
So this
year
is
and 5th season.
This is the 4th year of Film Franchise Fortnights. It's been 4 years as of now. Are you sure it's 5 seasons?
We're in season 5 right now. By the end, because of the way a year and a season works, by the end of the 4th year, we'll have done 5, because our first one was shorter.
I don't know if that's right.
Season 1 was 2016, Season 2 was 2017, Season 3 was 2018, Season 4 was 2019, so we're in Season 5 now in 2020. Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess. Anyway.
You seem distracted.
I am. To celebrate the 4th anniversary of Film Franchise Fortnights, we have decided to cover another franchise, which we've already covered before, which was chosen by our Patreon, and you can head over there to www.patreon.com/cultpopture. For $1, you get to vote on every second franchise we cover on this here podcast. But here's the story. Early on in the years of Film Franchise Fortnights, we didn't like the idea. We didn't believe in the idea of splitting up a franchise across multiple episodes, and so Freddy vs. Jason, because it counted as one franchise, because they crossed over, we had to cover that in 1 week. And so, although it was at the time our longest episode, clocking in at like 1 hour and 1 minute or something like that, and that's covering all 20 films in the franchise. We decided to do it properly, the way we would kind of do it if we rolled that franchise now, which is to cover Friday the 13th, then cover A Nightmare on Elm Street, and then what we're going to do, you heard it here first, is so today we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th. Next week, not next fortnight, next week, we are going to be talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, and then the following week after that, we will be talking about Freddy vs. Jason, the crossover, as well as the 2 reboots, because Platinum Dunes did reboots of both of these franchises in 2009 and 2010. So today we are here to talk about the Friday the 13th series, running from Friday the 13th all the way back in 1980 right through to Jason X, which was released in 2002. And so yeah, should we just crack on right into it? AJ's already teased some of the themes.
It's good to be back as well, I think. I would like to say. Like, we sort of, when we started this podcast, it was more about the joy of having comprehensive knowledges of franchises. And I think horror movies or horror franchises are the most rewarding when you're tackling franchises from that angle. And so we've done a bunch of ones after Freddy and Jason, respectively, and sort of
what are some of those ones we've done?
Oh, we've done Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we've done Halloween, we've done Hellraiser, we've done Scream. We've yet to do Child's Play. I feel like that's the big one left on the table. There's probably a few more, but it's a fun sort of place to be analyzing these things that plenty of other people have analyzed, but fans of those franchises never turn their nose up at new discoveries and new people talking about it. I feel like horror movie franchises are the most supportive new listeners we've gained. So.
And I do just want to point out, I don't know about you, but I didn't re-listen to our original episode in preparation for this, so there will probably be some information retread. This I'm kind of treating more as like an overwriting of the original episode, and not like a sequel that fills in the holes. I'm not expecting you to go back and listen to that episode to understand this one. This is a new, fresh. So there will be things that are reiterated.
I started listening to it and fell asleep. But if, last year we did, because this is film franchise Fortnights Redux, and last year we did a Spider-Man Redux, and the big difference there was that you covered our original Spider-Man episode and I covered our Redux, whereas you've covered both Freddy and Jason franchises yourself, and I've sat along for the ride, so you've done it again. So what'll the difference be? I would be interested if someone wants to go back and listen to the old episode and let us know where our opinions differ and things we learned.
Maybe this would have been a fun thing, because I've done all the horror franchises, so maybe it would have been interesting for you to do this one. However,
too bad. Too late.
Okay, so we're going to go through this film by film, whereas first time we did it, we just went, here's the list of the films. Anyway, let's talk about it.
We were naive, we were young and stupid. We're smart and cool now.
Okay, so Friday the 13th, 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham. What's that about, AJ?
Well, Richard, everybody knows that Friday the 13th is about a serial killer named Jason Voorhees in a hockey mask who goes around a camp killing teenagers. What? What's all this?
Famously, the first Friday the 13th doesn't actually feature Jason as the serial killer.
How old were you when you found out Jason wasn't in the first Friday the 13th?
13.
Really?
I was today years old. God, what an awful fucking expression. I hate that so much.
How do you feel about 100 o'clock?
What was that?
100 o'clock?
I've never heard that.
I'm trying to make it happen. You heard it here first. If someone asks what's the time, and the implication being they think it's too late, look at your watch or your clock and be like, oh my god, dude, it's 100 o'clock.
Nice. My favorite someone asking the time gag is if you ask someone the time and they go 8, you go o'clock.
Because what else would it be?
Yeah, exactly. Like as if that's the part that needed clarification. Because they inadvertently go, yeah, and they either take a while to absorb what you're doing, or they just don't find it funny.
Well, anyway. So Jason, Freddy's certainly not in it, but Jason is not in it. It's about a bunch of campers who are they're actually camp counselors who are prepping Camp Crystal Lake for a summer camp that's happening in a couple of weeks, right? So they're not actually campers themselves; they're camp counselors. And over the course of one night, they're all slowly picked off, one by one. A couple of times it's after doing dirty deeds. Done
dirt cheap. It was a very low budget film.
Yeah, it was. And in the end, it's revealed that it's actually a woman named Pamela Vorhees who is going around the camp killing the counselors because her son Jason, 30 years earlier? Much earlier was it?
It's like 10 years.
Was it? I thought it was. Isn't the first one? Isn't it like 1950 something that he died?
Probably, dude.
Anyway, he died and he drowned in a lake while the counselors were too busy having sex and smoking drugs. And so she's going around killing all the counselors as sort of like a spiritual.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. As like a spiritual recompense, and someone's got to pay for my Jason dying, and so she kills off almost everyone until there's one girl left, and then in an all out battle, she decapitates Pamela Voorhees and jumps on a boat to float away into Camp. There it is. I'm going to say Camp Green Lake, which is from the novel Holes, so many times in this podcast. Camp Crystal Lake. She's in the middle of Camp Crystal Lake, and the next morning the police turn up to sort of, assess the situation, and she's in the canoe, and then a corpse-like Jason Voorhees jumps out of the boat and grabs her, and then she wakes up in hospital. Which I forgot. I just thought it ended with Jason jumping out of the lake.
Oh, really?
I thought that's like famously how the movie ended. But it's not. She wakes up in the hospital and she's like, "Oh, what happened to that boy?" And they're like, "We don't know what you're talking about." And she's like, "That means he's still out there." So technically, Jason is in the first one, but he's not the killer.
Yeah. But I did specifically say he's not the killer, because I knew that you were going to be a fucking little snot-nosed little smart-ass.
Did it on purpose. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the development of this film, because it's kind of interesting. So Halloween came out, which we've covered here on Film Franchise Fortnights. Go check that out. Halloween came out in 1978, and that was a huge success. And so Sean S. Cunningham very transparently said that, tried to cash in on that success. And so he came up with a vague idea of the film, and he was like, fuck it. Took out a full-page ad in Variety magazine that said Friday the 13th, the most terrifying movie ever made. And there wasn't a script at this point.
And that's why the series is called Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it's very similar to Cult Popture, where it was like, came up with this cool name, and there was like, I can't let this die. I have to create something to fill this name.
That's somewhat true, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was the first indie film ever to secure distribution by a major studio in the US.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What a cool little story.
What did you think of this film?
What I think of it, here's one thing I do remember from our original covering of this film back in 2016. I remember not liking this film at all. I remember watching the first one, and being like, "Oh god,
that's it.
this is what we have to suffer through to get to get to the end of Freddy vs. Jason." And I remember it was for a long time, Friday the 13th as a franchise was kind of our go-to example of like, how often is the sixth film in a franchise the best one? And we'd be like, Friday the 13th, 6 is the best one. And not to spoil my opinions for later on, but like, I've got a much more traditional ranking for these films this time round.
Have you done an official ranking, by the way?
I have. It's on my Letterboxd, which you can find a link to, as well as all of ours in the show notes. The first one is not my favorite one, but it's one of my favorite ones now. I don't know what changed. Maybe I understand the language of horror movies now. Maybe I kind of dig the authenticity of it not being like a hashed out sequel. Because I think that's why I liked the later sequels the first time we watched it, is because they were intrinsically more fun because they were trying to reinvent the formula a bit. But watching something that doesn't know what it is kind of way better now.
Yeah. Like a film that doesn't realize it's...
Well, because if it realized what it was doing, it would have Jason with the hockey mask from the first film.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It's a genuine movie in a way. It's not,
They were
not
trying.
motivated. Yeah. It's not motivated by iconography or anything. It's just, I can make a slasher film. Let's see what we can do. And there's a heart to it that I would say is probably in the first few films that you don't see as we dredge towards the upper single digits.
Yeah.
So yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot more than I did last time.
Yes, same here. I think I ended up giving this film something like 4 stars, but yes, the very same experience that you had. I just had a good time, and I think knowing where the franchise goes, you can appreciate and also just like
things.
knowing where movies went, like where horror movies in the decades since went, just knowing that it's like this came up with all of these things.
Yeah, it did. And like there's a satisfaction to being like, yep, this is a killed off one by one slasher movie.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. So yeah. So I liked it a lot more this time.
That's good. Now, we talk a lot here about being woke.
Oh God! All right.
So when this film came out, it was like destroyed in the tabloids for being horrifically misogynist.
Really?
Yeah, and like Gene Siskel of Siskel and Ebert, two of the most famous movie reviewers of all time, hated this movie so much that he spoiled the ending in his review because he's like, "Don't go see it. This is the worst fucking movie I've ever seen."
That's so undignified.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's crazy.
But so more recently, the kind of misogyny of the film has actually been thrown into question because, like the final girl she doesn't have sex during the events of the film, but she's not a pure virgin who doesn't drink or do drugs. Like she smokes pot and she's had previous relationships and everything. Yeah. And there's not really any kind of like I don't feel like the women are punished in the film any more than the men. And the villain is a woman as well.
The villain's a woman, revolutionary. Yeah, you're right. Because what is the final girl's name?
Alice.
She, I was thinking about this, and you see her earlier in the film sort of reject the advances of like her boss in a very tasteful way. And so it's interesting that this would be called misogynist. And I wonder if you could find the reasons. Is it just the general...
It's just general movie? Horror is always misogynist. Like that's kind of like, it's just... When you read arguments saying that, you kind of just go like, yeah, that's just horror movies, like because going, oh, these women are being killed for having sex. It's like, but so the men, like,
yeah. I think though that Alice is quite a strong character, and it's sort of shown earlier on in the film. What I do like about early slasher films, or maybe it is only Friday the 13th, the first 2 or 3 Friday the 13ths, you don't know who the final girl is. They don't kind of lampshade it in the same way. Like, there's not a clear main character until there's only one character left.
There's no Laurie Strode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was cool.
Yeah, that was very cool.
I didn't actually remember who was left watching it again. I couldn't remember who survived all the way through. Initially, I thought it was the first girl you see because that's, filmmaking language tells you the first person you see in the story is probably going to be the main girl. And then she's, I think, the first to get killed. So it's not not her at all.
And do you remember what this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I remember it being low. It's like 30-something.
Interesting. It's 63.
That's higher than I thought it would be.
It's the only spoilers for the rest of the thing. It's the only fresh one.
That's
so
bullshit.
Fresh on Rotten Tomatoes being above 60, which is its audience score, 60. So for each of these films, I've got a couple of fun little things at the end. I've got the body count of the film. Do you want to take a guess as to what that is?
Okay, 9.
You're very close. 11.
Ah.
So, and I've also got a piece of dumb IMDb trivia for each of these.
So one of those bodies is Kevin Bacon. I feel like we need to obligatorily
A film franchise Fortnights obligatory Kevin Bacon mention that we have in every episode.
Well, just because he wasn't famous by when this movie came out, so it's like an early Kevin Bacon appearance.
Yeah, there is. It's not a dumb IMDb trivia I wrote down, but there was something that's like it contradicts itself midway through the thing. It's like, let me see if I can find it.
It's like Kevin Bacon's not in this film. Oh wait, yes he is.
It actually is kind of written like that from memory. How it's like, this happened, but actually... Yeah, so it says, launched the acting careers of both Adrienne King, who played Alice, and Kevin Bacon. Actually, this was not Bacon's first movie.
Well, that's not what launching
it's like
the
two
career
people
means.
were writing this. And that's not even the dumb IMDb trivia. Here's what I wrote down. So, dumb IMDb trivia is a segment we sometimes do because IMDb trivia is just user-generated. Anyone can write something on there. So it says... ends in a catfight. One of the biggest catfights in horror after the end of Aliens and the end of Carrie, which both also end in catfights. Now, just using the term catfight to describe a fight between two women is kind of funny, and the fact that it uses it like 3 times in one sentence. But it's also like
that's what it's called.
There's a ranked list somewhere, and it's one of the biggest below these two. Like, it's not along with, it's after. Also,
like there's some kind of volume of catfight that each strike gives it another number.
Yeah, because it's one of the biggest. So also should mention as well, just interesting to see where the franchise goes, that during this film, one of the producers, Steve Miner, initially thought that it was he thought it was an idiotic idea to bring back Jason in sequels, saying he wasn't your villain, he's just a figment of someone's imagination, and that no sequel should bring back Jason because that would be stupid. So his producer Steve Miner said that. So now we're along to Friday the 13th Part 2, directed by Steve Miner. So this came out the following year. And this brings back Jason. So he's now a fully grown man, and he wears a sack over his head with one hole for an eye.
But Richard, whatever happened to the hockey mask? I thought this was a franchise about
fucking getting to
it. I kind of see where Steve Miner of 1980 is coming from, because I am sure there's an answer for this somewhere. Maybe I just interpreted it wrong, but when Jason grabs Alice at the end of Friday the 13th Part 1, it looks like a little kid.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, he drowned in 1958. It's presumably 1980. Friday the 13th says it's present day. It doesn't specify the date exactly.
I think it's... you later find out that it's 1979.
Right, okay.
Like on a tombstone.
Right. So you see, first of all, the fact that he's stayed as a child for 30 years would... 30 years? 20 years?
21 years.
21 years would suggest that he is... it is a figment of her imagination. He's frozen in some sort of stasis, which means...
Yeah.
He's forever cursed to walk these lands as the child of the, because he died as a child.
Oh, yeah.
But then in the sequels, he's a fully grown man, and it's not really till later on that they bring in any kind of supernatural element, and they don't really say it, but it kind of feels like what they want you to believe is that he was a feral child who just lived in Camp Crystal Lake and grew up harshed by the elements and then started killing when other people showed up. But if that's the case, then why is he a fucking kid in the lake? What is going on? Is it just that is a figment of her imagination and the real Jason was a fully grown wild man? That there's such a lack of clarity on that point, and it's amazing to me that no one ever really like tried to explain what was going on or anything like that.
There's a few different sort of fan theories throwing around. Like either that he just like aged up, and although actually they in number 9 they try to address it, and we'll get to that.
Nice. I think I remember that actually.
So
now that you say it,
there you go. So what is this one about? The
okay, so this one is it's 5 years later. Yeah. So we're immediately messing with the timeline. It's ostensibly the same setup as the first film, but now we're not at Crystal Lake. We're on the other side of Crystal Lake camp, I think.
Yeah, although it is with what happened to our final girl from the last film?
Alice? She gets killed at the start of this one. Yeah. After 5 years of is it the fight?
No, so it's 2 months after the original murders.
Right.
She gets killed. Then it cuts to 5 years later.
Right, and she is killed when she finds a head in her
Pamela's head.
Fridge. Is it Pamela's head?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So she finds Pamela's head in her fridge, and then Jason is behind her and kills her in her hometown, and then presumably makes his way back to the Camp Crystal Lake area.
He's got 5 years to do it. It'll be fine.
That's true. So yeah, it's some counselors setting up a camp, and they know of the legend of Jason and Pamela Voorhees from 5 years earlier. And some of them are kind of like, oh, let's go check it out. Let's go across the lake. Again, it's just sort of everyone getting killed in different ways.
Yeah. One of them's in a wheelchair?
Yeah, one of the characters is in a wheelchair, which I really like about this film is that there's a character in a wheelchair who isn't treated any differently from the rest of the cast to the point where he nearly gets laid because he's just a hot guy to the one of the girls like who has a crush on him doesn't treat him like he's any different. She just genuinely is horny for him. And then just like all the rest, he also gets killed by Jason with seemingly no there's no sympathy taken on him. So it's in a weird fucking way, it's pretty progressive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of cool that it feels very intentional to put a differently abled person in the film, but then almost have it be irrelevant to who they are as a person to the point where they're not even exempt from getting a machete to the face.
Yeah, And then what ends up happening to Jason at the end?
So there's a couple of survivors left over. There's actually 3 survivors left over. Do you know about this? Did you come across this? Okay, so I'll say the end of the film first, and then we can go back to the mystery third survivor.
Yeah.
So the final girl whose name is
Ginny,
and her like boyfriend who's like their boss, are the ones left over at the camp, and they're getting attacked by Jason, and so she runs into like Jason's little shack which he's been living in out in the woods, and he finds Pamela's head, and she knows the legend of what happened to Pamela and what happened to Jason, and so she immediately starts talking to Jason as if she were his mother and says, "Mommy is very pleased of you, but it's time to sit down. It's time." And so she gets him to like sort of kneel in front of her, and just as she's about to cut his head off, he sees the head behind her and realizes that she's not, in fact, his mum, and he freaks out just in time for the other guy to show up, Ginny's boyfriend, and they sort of both attack Jason to the point where you think he's dead, and then the last moments of the film is them in their cabin, and the glass on the window pane shatters, and a now hoodless Jason Voorhees in all his ugly glory is slow-mo jumping through the window towards Ginny.
Yeah.
And I think in the sequels we find out the boyfriend dies, but she just gets taken away to she's like permanently, she goes crazy.
Yeah, it's implied that Paul dies off screen, but his fate is technically left. Yeah.
But there is another character who survives.
Who did?
So, and Patrick H. Willems, I think, posted about this on Twitter recently, and he was like, "This is driving me crazy. Why is no one else talking about this?"
Yeah.
And so there's a guy who, the first time you see him, he's wearing like a Halloween mask, and he gives one of the characters a fright. Then when they're all sitting around the campfire telling the story of Jason, he jumps in and is like, "Ooga booga booga," and gives everyone a fright. He's a little shit, and he feels like tailor-made to be like the annoying character who gets killed, in a brutal way, and serves him right because he was such a little douchebag. But towards the end of the film, a bunch of the characters go to a bar in town, and they go back to the camp, and that's when they all get killed. But he goes, "No, I'm going to stay here a bit longer, have a few more drinks," and we never see him again.
Yeah. Sweet.
And it's so weird because it's not like it's a mistake, because someone wrote it, someone played the character, and presumably was like, I'm not really in the end of this film, am I? What happens? So it's just this guy just doesn't go back to the lake, and he survives, even though horror movie rules dictate he deserves to die along with the rest of them. And we never hear from him again. He's not in any of the sequels. It's very strange. It's a very strange little oddity. Which are very fun to pick out in these really long running franchises.
Yeah,
it's like when we worked out in Final Destination how you actually cheat death, like what, because judging by what happens to all the characters post their movie, we worked out what's the only way to cheat death. It's like one of those things. It's like this off-screen kind of implication that like this dude survives because he didn't return to the camp, and that's what you have to do to survive Jason's wrath.
Yeah. I'm just going to check the Friday the 13th wiki and just double check that this character... Oh, that's a different Ted. There's two characters named Ted in this franchise.
Oh my god.
Cut the whole thing. This is... Oh, God damn it. All right, yeah, so according to Friday the 13th wiki... as our experiences with wikis on this podcast have been, somewhat mixed. It's just he just leaves the entire ordeal unscathed. I like that. I like to me. I don't like. It's not like an annoying loose thread. It's like, yeah, great. That's like this
it's
one
so
dude,
interesting. Yeah. I agree, but it's just interesting that he survives. And I'd also like to now say as well that Friday the 13th Part 2 is my favourite film in the franchise.
Interesting.
I think this is my favorite one. I think it's cool because I think Jason looks cool. I think Sackhead Jason looks cooler than Hockey Mask Jason.
What the fuck?
Do you disagree?
100%. Oh my god.
I don't know. Again, there's just something charming about the fact they didn't know what they were doing, and it comes across a lot.
I could not disagree more.
Really?
This is the biggest disagreement we've had on the franchise.
On the franchise?
Sackhead Jason looks so stupid.
What is this attitude, Richard? Stop being mean to Sackhead Jason. It's my favourite skin.
Oh, God. The worst.
I bet you like Uber Jason. I bet he's your favourite.
I love Uber Jason. All right, what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes? Do you remember?
No, 42.
28.
What?
28.
That's insane.
Yeah. So production of this film. The idea was thrown around of having an anthology film, like Halloween was once thought of being, and so just having like an event film every year that was a different horror film, and it was called Friday the 13th, and it will be released on a Friday the 13th that year. There was also Alice, who we've talked about, the final girl from the first one. She was supposed to be similar to Laurie Strode, like the recurring heroine of the franchise. But she was stalked by a fan after the release of the first film, who like broke into her house, and so she wandered out, and she didn't appear in any films for like 15 years, and then she started doing voiceover work, and she only just started appearing on screen in films in the last like 10 years.
Oh, that's really sad.
Mm.
Hope she's okay now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Betsy Palmer, who played Pamela Voorhees, Tom Savini, who did all the special effects, and he's like one of the most well-known special effects guys of all time, and Sean Cunningham, who was obviously the guy behind the first film. They've all made public remarks about how stupid it is that Jason was seemingly alive the whole time, and if he was, why didn't he just tell Pam that he was still alive, which would have avoided all the murders in part one. One thing we should have mentioned in part one as well, actually, which is a motif introduced in the first film, which is used in all of them, is the so that's
sort
kind
of theme
used.
music.
Yeah. So and there's a conscious decision in Friday the 13th to do the opposite of what Halloween did. So Halloween is like wall-to-wall music, and it's got a super iconic score, and so there's almost no score in the first Friday the 13th other than when the killer is there. And so the climax of the film, when it's like the killer's unmasked, so to speak, there's the cat fight. It's funny how cat fight is two girls and a dog fight is two planes. There's a lot of this music, but yeah, and that, as we mentioned 4 years ago, is supposed to be like kill mum or mama, mummy, mum,
kill, mum.
And so that's supposed to be the voice of Jason inside Pamela Voorhees' head telling her to kill.
Although if Jason is just alive and Pamela doesn't know it, then it's actually not the voice of Jason. It's just some weird hallucination she's having.
Well, it was always a weird hallucination. I don't think...
Yeah.
I don't think you're supposed to think... Like, I didn't mean that Jason is actually there going... like, it was always his voice ringing in her head.
That's a very good counterpoint.
Yeah.
It's like when someone was like, are these real clowns? When people dressed up as clowns were like walking up to doorbell cameras and stuff. Someone was like, are they real clowns or people just pretending?
Oh, they do. Just people dressed like clowns.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck's a real clown?
And so, interestingly, this is... So, like we sort of said with the first thing, how, Friday the 13th is the franchise where you got Jason, and he wears his hockey mask and he goes around killing people at Camp Crystal Lake. This is actually one of only 2 movies where Jason kills people at Camp Crystal Lake, not including the reboot. Because the first one, it's not him, and then most of the other films actually don't take place at Camp Crystal Lake. So the 6th one is the other film.
So even the one where he wears the hockey mask for the first time and kills teenagers is not set at Camp Crystal Lake.
Yeah, it's like a house nearby.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. All right. What do you think the body count of this film is?
Okay, so if the first one was 11, let's say 22 is the body count.
Okay, wow, it's 10.
The fucking rules of horror movies are doing me dirty here. You're supposed to go bigger and bloodier with the horror movie sequels.
So that's 10, including the implied killing of Paul off screen.
Including that?
Yeah.
So it's 9 then, because you don't see it.
Or maybe it's not including that. I just wrote down 10, 1 implied. I don't know if I meant including or excluding.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter, does it? Because then that other guy just gets away scot-free. So that is like just as much of a ambiguity in the body count, I guess. If you were trying to if you saw the cast and were trying to do the maths, like, okay, so there's one final girl. It's possible the villain might die. It's like you wouldn't factor in one of them just disappearing from the plot.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to say about why this is your favorite?
It's the girls are the sexiest in this one.
Okay.
Nah, that's not true.
Okay, what one are they the sexiest in then?
Well, that's not true, Richard, because all the girls are sexy.
No girls are sexy.
No, because girls are sexy in every movie. There's no such thing as a not sexy girl. Actually, I shouldn't say that. There's no such thing as a not sexy girl who is 18 or older. Yeah. Bases covered. I'm not misogynistic.
All
I'm
right.
I'm as not misogynistic as Friday the 13th Part 1.
All right. Cool. And that's your whole reasoning.
Well, okay. Well, I feel like we are.
Well, shut up.
Do you have any? Maybe we should do this at the end. Are there any? Let's. For those who are like, oh man, they're racing through the movies too fast. Let's
there's
say
fucking
after
10
this,
of them.
let's say after this, we'll go through a general our favorite deaths, our favorite characters, our favorite moments across the franchise, so that we're not trying to remember which movie does this happen in, because that's. That can be difficult when they're as similar as they are.
Yeah, also, a lot of these films, and we are kind of going into the production and stuff as well here, but both Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street both have like 4 to 6 hour long documentaries that cover the production of all of the films, and we're going to watch those at some point, probably in the not too distant future, probably this month, for Film Franchise Follow-Ups on Patreon. So that'll be more about the background of the production. We'll dive like similar to what we did with Lord of the Rings, where it's like, a lot of this, especially with Lord of the Rings, a lot of the stuff is so like public knowledge that. So anyway, they're both apparently very good. So if you want to watch along with us at home, feel free to.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Dumb IMDb trivia for number 2. Jason actually dials a phone in part 2. Alice picks up the phone at the beginning and someone hangs up. It's implied that it's Jason. Although where he learned how to use a phone is anybody's guess.
Anybody's guess. My God. There is that scene with Alice and her murder is one of those famous scenes that's like Silver's plan in Skyfall or Joker's plan in The Dark Knight, apparently, where it's like if you analyze how many dominoes had to fall in a very specific order for her to wind up where she is and get killed, is like it relies on Jason knowing what a cat's gonna do and like stuff like this. Apparently, it's if you actually look at it, it's full of like, what the fuck? How did he know this is gonna happen?
Okay, so now we're on to Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D.
Is that the actual title, or is it just Part 3?
Well, when it's in 3D, it's called in 3D.
So there's 2 versions.
Yeah. So this was released in 1982. Again, 1 year later. Again, directed by Steve Miner. And what's this film about?
So it's a bunch of teenagers who are... This time they are just camping because they want to camp. They're not counselors or anything.
Yeah.
And they're at a house near Camp Crystal Lake.
That's right.
And Jason just shows up and starts murdering them because they're horny.
Yeah. And so when is the set?
A day later, a day after.
So it's the following day. So this actually takes place on Saturday the 14th. Although the majority of the film actually takes place the following day on Sunday the 15th. That's what happens, and Jason doesn't acquire any like significant costume changes or stop
imagery.
Stop it. Hold the phone.
Nothing else happens. It's just a run-of-the-mill, like you would see this one and not see it as more significant than the others.
I mean, that's true. But Jason does get his signature hockey mask in this film. Also because this film takes place the day after part 2, it's the news of Jason hasn't spread yet. So it's like there's still the kind of urban legend, but not everyone would have heard that, whereas in every subsequent film there's all these massacres and everyone knows who he is.
Yeah. And so the teenager, I should say young adult, because I don't think they're still in high school. I think they're out of high school.
You can still be a teenager and out of high school. Have you ever heard of 19?
I've never heard of 19. Okay, so the 19-year-old, presumably, that he takes the hockey mask from is a loner called Shelley, who, while all the rest of the group are kind of coupled up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, Shelley is like the ugly, frizzy-haired, fat kid who no one likes.
Shelley Finkelstein.
and he's really annoying and pulls heaps of pranks that no one finds funny. And he's one of those characters where it's like, fuck, why am I relating to him more than anyone else in this franchise? Why is Shelley Finkelstein my audience surrogate into the Friday the 13th series? It's so frustrating. Because as well, with kind of like the morals that movies often adopt. You know, a lot of movies will teach you about friendship and being kind to one another. Shelley is also like the kind of character you kind of think will survive because he's the innocent one, the one without sin. But he doesn't. He just gets killed, and I imagine he died feeling very unfulfilled. You know, and Jason steals his hockey mask. And look, he.
But I mean, little did he know that that hockey mask would go on to be one of the most iconic pieces of film. Of film.
This shitty little kid is responsible for Jason's hockey mask. The other significant thing about the film is that, as we said, it's 3D, and so very egregious moments of things being pointed directly toward the camera, and too many things that don't need to be 3D are 3D. But I remember, Richard, we kind of have this sort of rule of thumb for deciding what the best of something is, right? And we've talked about that. We've never really discussed this in broad terms before, Richard. But I know that it started with Friday the 13th when you were telling me how you had read someone's review of the film, and they said that Friday the 13th Part 3 is the best one because it's the one you're thinking of when you're describing what Friday the 13th is about. You know what I mean? Because if you describe a man in a hockey mask going around killing teens at a camp, that's almost exclusively Friday the 13th Part 3, or at least that's the first one where he does that. And therefore it's the best one. And I don't know if I agree with that. I think
I don't think it's the best one.
No, you don't? Interesting. No. There's a moment in this film I'd like to talk about that I almost find as confusing as is Jason a child or not between the films, And another theory actually is maybe he's like frozen in stasis as a 10-year-old at the end of Part 1, and after the 5-year jump, he's now a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't know. Although that wouldn't make sense with how he kills Alice 2 months later. But there's the main character of Friday the 13th Part 3, her like cross to bear is that we know for a lot of the movie that something bad happened to her.
Yeah.
Earlier, like years earlier at this very camp. And she sort of mentions it a few times that like coming back to this camp is a means of therapy for her to move past some kind of traumatic event. And about 3/4 of the way through the film, we find out what that traumatic event is. And it's that while she was at this camp a year or so earlier, or a couple of years earlier, she was attacked by a man with a grotesque face. And
it was Finkelstein.
No, I don't. Is it supposed to be Jason?
Yeah, so it's implied to be
attacked
Jason.
By?
And a little bit of behind the scenes trivia. So, because she tells a story about a previous interaction with Jason. Originally, the original script had that Jason sexually assaulted her.
Well, that is kind of still in there, though, isn't it? It's kind of implied that that's what happened.
Yeah, but it was explicitly.
Right.
Jason was a rapist. But they were like, that's probably too evil. And audiences wouldn't keep coming back for sequels if the bad guy's a rapist.
Yeah, because later on when she is the final girl and she's facing off against Jason, he like briefly takes off his mask and like winks at her or something, and he looks like the figure, the grotesque man we see in her flashback. But I didn't know if that was like a mental fabrication again, because the film ends with her like after escaping him and thinking he's dead out on a lake where she sees unmasked Jason back at the house, and he like sees her and runs towards her, and then she gets attacked by presumably the zombie of Pamela Voorhees. Do you agree? It's very confusing.
It's very confusing. That is a dream, though, I believe.
I know, but even by the time you realize it's a dream, you're still too confused, and it's all you can think about.
I
It's all
like how you're like, yeah, no, it doesn't matter that it's a dream. It's still confusing, but it's like, it doesn't have to make sense. It's a dream.
No, I don't know. Maybe it just feels like it's handled very clunky. It doesn't feel. I don't know. The problem with these movies in general, I think, is that it doesn't feel like anyone's holding your hand and being like, this is the grand narrative I'm weaving for you. It just kind of feels like someone set up a camera and you're watching horrific events unfold, which maybe is, as we said at the start, maybe that is just the point.
Yeah, and there's ain't nothing wrong with that, mate. So this was actually planned as the final film in the Friday the 13th trilogy. When it was being made, but then they were like, let's leave it open for more sequels. And it was the first ever wide release in 3D.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say about this film? It's very, watching them again, I was like, 1 is actually pretty good. I quite enjoyed it, and then 2 and 3 felt like identical to me.
Yeah, they're pretty similar.
But again, having said that, I enjoyed them all.
Yeah,
all those first 3. I mean,
I think, and again, this is maybe just from a more broad talking of the franchise, is like what I was saying at the start, like, what are they about? What's the point? Because so many things happen before the murders start that it feels like it's trying to say something. Like, at one point, 2 of the characters, Shelley is one of them, and one of the girls are, like, getting groceries, and they're, like, accosted by a motorbike gang, and like they run over their motorbikes as a display of, like, character growth. You know what I mean? And it all feels like it's growing their characters before just unceremoniously killing them off. So I don't know. It's just I'm interested to know if there's something I'm not getting, or if it's just there's nothing to it. It's one or the other.
I think there's just nothing to it, man. Did we say the Rotten Tomatoes score? No. Okay. Here's a fun thing: the Rotten Tomatoes score and the body count are the same number. What do you think that number is?
100%.
No.
Old man Richard's not going to realize I tomfooled him till it's too late.
100 o'clock. Yeah. What serious guess?
Okay, so the last one was like 20 something.
Yeah, and had so the last one was 28 and had a body count of 10.
This will be 11.
Oh, very close.
12.
Yes, very good. So now for our piece of dumb IMDb trivia for Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D, 1982. So Chris is the name of the final girl you were talking about. How did Chris dream about Pamela Voorhees at the ending when she never met her? And why did her carcass have a head? And then in parentheses, Pam Voorhees was decapitated by Alice at the end of Part 1. And has exclamation mark. And also Voorhees is spelled incorrectly twice.
Almost scarily similar to my very same deconstruction of that scene earlier. Meaning maybe I was the dumb IMDb trivia all along.
Yeah, the dumbest IMDb trivia of them all. Okay, now we're up to Friday the 13th, the final chapter. And if you're looking at the bloody time code of this podcast, I think you know this didn't end up being the final chapter. Either that or AJ and I had a lot to say about these 4 movies. So this came out in 1984, which, what other horror movies came out that year? That's right, Nightmare on Elm Street, which, check that out next week.
No,
fuck off.
Fuck you. Don't tell me what to do, bitch.
So this was directed by Joe Zito.
The Zeets.
What's this one about, matey?
Okay, I think this is one of the most interesting setups of a Friday the 13th film. Yeah. Unless you count going to space as more interesting, which maybe on paper that is. So this one is set the next day and is about a bunch of teenagers are going to an empty sort of 2-story house in this little country neighborhood that they've like got for the weekend. Yeah. And it is across the road from an occupied household where a teenage girl, her mother, and her little brother, Corey Feldman, live.
Corey Feldman stars as himself.
Yeah, and as well as this, there is also like a bounty hunter guy who is searching for Jason that is like in the area as well. And I thought it was interesting that it kind of sets up these three camps, and it's not, and I don't, no pun intended with the word camp. Like, it's not the same group of people this time. It's three separate groups of people that all kind of become intertwined. And I thought that was interesting. So, Jason, who was hanged at the end of 3, is taken to hospital where his body's being examined, and he inexplicably rises from the dead and escapes.
Like, he'll do that, man.
Yeah, he's bound as his want. And he escapes and comes to this sort of area. Oh, and there's also 2 twins that show up who are like a 4th faction that kind of get involved with the party.
They're the Divergents.
Yeah. And Jason just sort of starts killing off everyone. I found like this was the precipice of the teen drama angle. Like, the teen drama in it is makes up so much of it, the like soap opera-ness of it. But it's also I kind of enjoyed it more.
Yeah, this is the one where Crispin Glover worries about being a dead fuck.
A dead fuck, like a bad lay. And you know what? Before he takes a corkscrew to the face, he does get laid, and she says he was good. And that's kind of nice for him.
That's his character arc.
Yeah, it is. It is his character arc. I think that's a great. The character arc is what I'm looking for, I guess, when I'm saying, is there something I'm missing? As it feels like there's enough happening in all of these movies for the characters to have arcs.
But no, you're
none
wrong.
Of them do. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, how does it end?
It ends with all of the people who turn up for the party are killed off, making them like kind of not even needed for the rest of the film. I think the mother from the house is killed off. I think it happens off screen, and so Corey Feldman and his older sister are the only ones left because the bounty hunter dude gets killed as well. I'm very liberally using the word bounty hunter. He's more just like a lone wolf who's looking for Jason. No one's hired him to do it. He gets killed, and she's so what's her name? The last girl, the final girl on this one.
Corey Feldman.
Yeah, Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman's sister. She is running sort of from house to house, escaping Jason. And Corey Feldman, whose name is Tommy because he becomes the Laurie Strode of the franchise. He really, his hobby is making like industry grade level Halloween masks. Like,
yeah, it's a tribute to Tom Savini.
Right, but it's like this 12-year-old kid is making these
I don't know, I've seen some pretty talented kids like with at my old job we had to go and film I worked for a kids show. That's not weird. We went and filmed. It was, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like this bit where you would go and like a kid would show off their skill. And one was this little girl, and she showed off how she was real good at making fursuits, and they were like full on, like proper, like you would see that at a furry con level fursuits, all made from scratch, and it was incredible. But then it was like, this is real fucking weird, because this girl was like 13 or probably younger and making these.
Wow. I watched a documentary the other week called Fursona about furry culture. It was very interesting. I recommend it. It essentially boils down to furries don't want you to know they have sex with each other in the fursuits. But they absolutely do. They just don't want you to know about that part. That was like the moral of the story. Anyway, so Corey Feldman, who is, all up to date on the latest prosthetic effects and things, he works out what Jason's backstory is through newspaper clippings and stuff. And so he shaves his head and sort of walks down the steps as he's about to murder as Jason's about to murder Tommy's older sister, and then he calls out to Jason, and in sort of a reflection of what happens, what Ginny does at the end of part 2, pretending to be Jason's mother, Tommy is pretending to be Jason and distracts him long enough being like, remember who you used to be, so that they can attack him and kill him, and it ends and he's still like alive, and then Corey Feldman's Tommy grabs the machete or whatever and just hacks him to pieces, screaming, die, die, die. The last scene is his sister coddling him at their hospital, and then he just barrels the camera, and it freeze frames on Corey Feldman looking directly into the camera as if to imply something.
But
like
what?
I don't think it quite earns the beat. I think that the beat is supposed to be like he's corrupted, he's lost his innocence.
Yeah,
he's
well,
become a
that's
monster.
and we'll get to that more with the next film in the franchise. But very good, very astute observations.
Maybe this one's the best one.
This is my favorite.
It's pretty good. This
one's really good. This is a great final chapter, even though it's nowhere near the final chapter. I love the introduction of like an actual kid taking on Jason. When, the whole reason this started is people that are supposed to look after kids were too busy having sex, and now one of those kids is rising the fuck up and taking down this Jason motherfucker.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned it takes place the next day. The climax of this film takes place on Tuesday, the 17th. So, production of this film apparently quite difficult.
Really?
The director was a massive prick by the sounds of it. The guy who played Jason took his name off the credits because he hated working on it so much. Although he's considered by many to be one of the best Jasons, apparently. Not that that's... I don't think you could distinguish that in any way. But yeah, so there's a scene where one of the characters is like in a lake and it was fucking like below freezing, and the director wouldn't let her get out between takes and she developed hypothermia. And Jason was like threatened to quit if he wouldn't let her out of the lake. And I think eventually he did. And there was also like, there's a bit where Jason smashes a guy's head in a shower, and the director wouldn't let him have a crash pad. So he was like, you actually have to smack this guy's face against this fucking porcelain.
What the fuck?
And it was Ted White, who played Jason, who fought for him to actually get a crash pad, although I think it's still
ironic that it's the
guy doing all these things. Well, because you would feel horrible.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then apparently, when he's screaming, die, 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 and hacking at what was 2 sandbags at the end of the film with a machete, he was picturing Joseph Zito, the director of the film. So bad time had by all. Anything else to say about what you thought of the film generally? Because, or why you think it might be one of the best?
I think that it's the teen characters are all pretty interesting and likable.
Yeah.
Which isn't... Usually it's like, haha, fuck you, you're dying.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
There's a film one. There's a guy who's into film.
Yeah, that's true. I think in this one, I felt genuine sadness when a lot of them get killed.
Yeah.
Because there's a girl in it who's part of the party who like loses her virginity across the course of the movie, and it's very wholesome.
Yeah.
And I thought that like before she dies, she's competing with Corey Feldman's sister for like the role of the final girl. Like it's not clear which direction it's going to go until she dies, and then it's like, well, I guess it's the girl living across the road. You're right about the fact that it has a kid in it. It brings the first kind of new perspective to the series.
Yeah, it's like Transformers, like how you should have kids.
Huh? Oh yeah, Transformers should be about kids. Yeah.
And then they introduced
really
a kid in the 5th one. They were the worst character.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that I think this might not be the quintessential Friday the 13th movie. It's no part 3 in 3D, but it may be the one.
Don't get me wrong.
It may be the one where the formula is the most refined, the characters are most likable, and the Jason is maybe the scariest.
Yeah, and it does something new without being too... I mean, obviously, going to Manhattan and going to space are new things, but these are still very grounded new ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah.
So, unfortunately as well, this was all around the time of Corey Feldman's issues in Hollywood,
with
his issues in Hollywood. him getting molested.
Yeah, I was about to say with molestation. But yeah,
that's sad.
Do you know he said like, oh, I'm releasing this documentary about it, and it's gonna fucking blow the lid open and everything. Do you know that actually came out? I didn't realize it had come out already. Came out in March. It's called My Truth: The Rape of Two Coreys, and Corey Haim's family apparently responded reasonably negatively to it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
maybe that's something we need to watch to understand why.
Yeah, I think there's some stuff that they were like that they said wasn't true that Feldman said was true. But yeah, very sad. And actually, this leads into dumb IMDb trivia. Time to trivialize that. So I actually wrote down the dumb IMDb trivia. The IMDb wasn't actually that dumb for this one, but there's one story that's just kind of like, I don't know, just thought it was worth sharing. So this is the whole entry. It is played for humour throughout the final chapter that Tommy Jarvis, Corey Feldman, is suddenly surrounded by horny teenagers renting a cabin he can see into from his own house. So there's one scene where he, in the middle of the night, sees like two girls getting changed. And he's like, "Holy shit, yes!" And
it's a great scene.
It's a great scene. Yeah,
I that's exactly what I would have done as a 12-year-old boy if I could see that.
Yeah,
because he kind of like buries his face in the pillow and like jumps up and down on the bed. He's like, "Wah!" And it's like I think I would have done that at 12.
Yeah, man. I'd do that at 27. However, the reality of the situation is that those actresses were indeed very or partially naked, and Corey Feldman was still young enough that Eric Anderson, and Kimberly Beck, those are the two of the women, took him trick-or-treating on the first day of filming, since it happened to be October 31st, 1983. So they shielded 12-year-old Feldman from most of the bad stuff using tricky editing where necessary, and what they could not control was the power of a low-cut top sans bra underneath. According to Feldman, in the scene in which Jodie Aronson's character bends over to greet Tommy's dog, unbeknownst to anyone but Feldman, he could see down her low-cut top.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
It just starts off like super wholesome and then just gets oh god. Like if it had just ended with like, they actually shielded him from all the nudity and took him trick-or-treating. It's like, oh, that's nice. But it's like, Corey Feldman did an interview where he's like, yeah, I fucking saw her titties.
Corey Feldman's a confusing person to try and like gauge my sympathies for, I think, because of things like this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. All right. Body count and Rotten Tomatoes. Which do you reckon's higher?
Let's say the body count's
You're
higher.
wrong. Interesting.
Wow.
What do you reckon the Rotten Tomatoes is?
20.
Yep, you're right. And what is the body count then?
19.
No. It's 14.
What is it? They're not really like increasing the amount of deaths per movie in this.
Yeah. They're all roughly the same.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's Friday the 13th, the final chapter, not talked about for as long as the other three films, despite being my favourite film of the franchise. So, number 5, almost halfway through. Well, halfway through, but we have to talk about it to then pass the halfway mark. So, we're almost halfway through the discussion.
Okay.
Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, 1985, the next year after the final. These films come out so fucking quickly that it's like nowadays, even when a film is like getting like it's released and it goes, yeah, we're planning another one, it's still like 2 or 3 years away. This is the last one.
Yeah,
Come back
it's
in
weird.
12 months.
Yeah. It's weird that they signify that this is the final one and then there's no notable gap before they do A New Beginning.
So we've had one every year except for 1983. And it's like, it's insane. It's insanity. So, what's this one about?
So this one takes place, 10 years later?
It's actually only like 5. It's not as long as you'd think. Let me double check. I remember, I should have written this down, but I remember being like, it's 5 years.
What the fuck? So Harold's...
He's 17 in the film.
He's 17? He does not look 17. Well, now adult Tommy Jarvis, who's no longer played by Corey Feldman, though Corey Feldman does appear at the start of the film in a dream sequence, is now grown up, and he's a 22-year-old, 17-year-old, and he's kind of like institutionalized in this... It's not really an asylum. It's like this farm.
It's a halfway house.
A halfway house. There you go. And he is haunted by the memory of Jason Voorhees. It's deeply affected him. And then in an unrelated scene at the halfway house, kind of the annoying, nerdy, chubby kid.
Finkelstein of this film.
The Finkelstein of this film is murdered by another unhinged member of the community for being annoying. And it freaks everyone out. But what's even freakier is that they're all still being killed by who Tommy thinks might be Jason, but Jason being dead probably isn't Jason. Although it could be, because he presumably hasn't died, or maybe has died before. And it ends in after a bunch of people being killed, it ends in a fight between Jason and Tommy, and
faux Jason,
and in the end, it's revealed that the man behind the hockey mask is in fact not an undead Jason, but one of the paramedics who came to the halfway house to pick up the dead kid, who ended up being the estranged father of that kid, and so has started murdering everyone as Jason. And that's where you think it ends, but then at the end, we see Tommy don the hockey mask, and the implication that he is the new Jason. Very excited to talk about this film.
Yeah, so this, I distinctly remember talking about in the first time we covered this franchise, that the director was instructed to do two things. You have to deliver a shock, a scare, or a kill every 7 or 8 minutes, and more importantly, to turn Tommy into Jason. So this was intended to be the start of a new franchise where Tommy would take up the mantle and be the new villain.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where it should have gone. However...
Yeah, I don't know that the films would be any better. I think it's a more interesting place to go.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So this film on paper is really interesting. I think it is bold to go, now we're in like an asylum or a halfway house. I think it is bold to say Jason's not in this one. And I think it's bold to turn Tommy into the killer. And while for the most part, it's just a schlocky, we're kind of in the dregs of 80s slasher schlock now. The guy who plays Tommy is it's like the best performance in the franchise.
Yeah, I really like him in this. And
he's so good.
He only has a dozen lines.
It's haunting. It's a haunting performance, and he's better than the movie he's in.
Yeah. And it's funny you should say that, actually, because all the Friday the 13th films, when they're filming, use fake titles, and they're often David Bowie songs. This one was called Repetition, and it was a film about like a survivor of a traumatic event, and he's in this like asylum halfway house thing. And John Shepherd, who plays Tommy, was cast in this film, and he went to like asylums, and he like studied the people, and then he got to set and found out it was actually a Friday the 13th film, and he was like, oh, okay. He was real disappointed because he thought this was going to be his fucking Oscar-winning big break, but no, it's just a schlocky Friday the 13th movie. But you know what? He still gave it his all.
So he didn't read the script before turning up to set?
No, it was all hidden.
Wow.
This was all, I mean, maybe not when he turned up to set, but when he found out eventually. Right. So this is weirdly, although this one isn't like a punish you for having sex kind of movie, which, the other ones are kind of implied to be. That's what Jason's MO. This is like the most explicit film. In terms of like nudity and sex, like there's full frontal nudity. And apparently the production is notorious for having like a shitload of drug usage behind the scenes. And the director
describe. He's like, "Oh man, we filmed a fucking porno in those woods. Like, you should see the stuff we cut out."
That's
so
very
again,
intriguing.
Yeah. There was like a 6-minute sex scene that had to be cut down to 10 seconds.
Yeah, I can think of where it would be.
Yeah. And yeah, that's crazy. It's fucking crazy.
Well, but fair enough that it was cut down though, because it just gets pointless after.
Oh yeah.
What's the point of a 6-minute sex scene in a slasher movie where they're just going to get killed? That's
just, like 85 minutes long as well.
Yeah. That is just fucking being gratuitous. That is just making a porno.
Yeah. Now, you said you're excited to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
Have at me.
Well, I sort of already talked about it. I find it fascinating that there's this like really chilling performance in what's otherwise one of the weaker ones so far. I think that there's so much like because I watched a lot of these with my flatmate, and he missed 5 and 6. And when I described what the plot of 5 was to him, he was like, "I like that. That sounds really good." And it's like, yeah, I've kind of described it better than what the film itself is, though. And
also because like the reveal of the killer is like, oh, it's
you see his face, and I'm like, I don't remember who that is. And then, then they go, "It's this guy from that one scene he was in at the start," and it's like, okay, which is a good thing or a bad thing that I didn't remember what happened at the end of this movie. That I didn't remember who the killer really was, and I think that there's a sort of a detour the film takes where like some of the background characters, because despite Tommy being the main, what you would probably call the main character in 4, 5, and 6, he actually like disappears for a lot of the 4 and 5 and 6 screen time. Like presumably in this one it's so that you think he's the killer. But during one of these detours, one of the counselors at this halfway house and this little boy who's like the youngest guy there, they go and see the little boy's older brother and his girlfriend who live in like this bohemian kind of caravan. And then they leave them, and then the brother and the girlfriend get killed. Do you remember this part?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was just real sad. I really like those characters, and they have this scene where he goes to the outhouse and locks the door, and then she comes up and starts shaking it, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Stop it! Stop it!" And she's like, "I love you," and then they sort of sing a song together, where it's like I can't remember how the song goes, but it's something like "I love you." Da, da, da. I'll play a clip of it here.
Ooh, baby, hey baby. Hey, baby.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby.
Hey, baby. Hey, baby.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh. There, you just heard it, and it's very sweet.
While he's trying to shit.
yeah, true. And I found myself weirdly invested in those two characters before seeing them murdered, and it's just real bummed out by it, I guess. So
also dying in a toilet is a bummer.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot to mention this on the last film. So, Friday the 13th Part 4 is the first time that Pamela Voorhees' first name is revealed.
No, it's not.
Yeah, she's just Mrs. Voorhees up until then.
Are you? No way! That can't be real.
And Friday the 13th Part 5 is the first time the full name Jason Voorhees is used. We know that his last name is Voorhees, and we know his name is Jason, but we never hear them together until this film.
Fuck, someone get Mandela on the horn.
Hello? Sorry, I can't talk right now. I died in prison in the 90s.
We've used that joke before. I feel bad.
Have we used that joke before?
Yeah, we have, but it's a good joke. I think it's a good joke.
I don't think I have.
You have. You absolutely have.
Fuck off. I think it's a Mandela effect.
Wow, in itself. Wow. Yeah.
So also, one fun thing this movie did is, when it goes the ki, ma, 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 we've got in this film. In this film, it's ki, 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 and it's supposed to be Tommy, like hearing, "Kill Tommy, kill."
Ah.
Yeah.
To be honest, I never hear the consonants in these. Well, I hear the K at the start of k, 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 but then it just kind of sounds like cha 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 at the end.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people think it's like ha ha ha,
Yeah.
but it's ma.
Or ta.
So dumb IMDb. Here we go. So it mentions a few, like it always fucking does on IMDb. It mentions like the same thing over and over again. And this one about the 7 or 8 minutes thing. And so this was, I took the second half of a thing about it. It said, in fact, Scuderi, who's one of the producers, presented Steinman, the director, with a graph to emphasize his every 8-minute rule, which meant the film needed to keep introducing new characters and then kill them 3 or 4 minutes later. You can evaluate how well Steinman followed the rule with this minute-by-minute breakdown of the film. And that's the end of it. There's no link to anything.
It doesn't link to what sounds like incredibly interesting from like a film nerd perspective. Well, no, that explains the little kid's brother and his girlfriend then.
Yeah.
Like, because they are introduced in a storyline that fucking goes nowhere. It goes fucking nowhere. But they are introduced and then immediately killed. Wow, that is interesting. And there's another couple in like a gas station, which again is like, why am I watching this? Where is Tommy? Where is the most interesting part of this film? Where's he gone?
Where's he gone? Okay, Rotten Tomatoes and body count. Which one's higher?
The Rotten Tomatoes body count is how many tomatoes went rotten in this film? No, the body count will be the highest it's ever been at 15, and the Rotten Tomatoes score will be the lowest it's ever been at 7.
You couldn't be more wrong. Rotten Tomatoes is 16. The body count is 21. You were right that it is the highest it's ever been. However, it is not the lowest that Rotten Tomatoes has ever been.
That would be a fun little idiosyncrasy, wouldn't it?
It would be. So up next, we've got Jason. We've got Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6, or Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. It depends on what you're looking at. So this came out in 1986, directed by Tom McLaughlin. And what's this one about?
So this one, ignoring the implication from the end of the last one that Tommy is now the killer, it begins with Tommy and his buddy going to destroy the corpse of the long-dead Jason Voorhees. And they go to a graveyard where they dig him up, and then Tommy sticks a metal bar into the corpse, and then lightning strikes it, bringing Jason back to life.
Thus introducing a supernatural element to the series.
So stupid. It's so stupid. That's
it's a callback to Frankenstein.
Okay, but
like it's an homage, the callback.
I feel like because Tommy's played by a different actor in this one.
A third actor.
Yeah, and he's not anywhere near as good as the guy from Part 5. And because of that, I think this, like, he doesn't react realistically enough to the idea of being responsible for bringing Jason back from the dead. Like, it's his fault. And it's just horrific. And this is where I think this is the first one, which is sort of...
This is the 6th one.
Yeah, sorry. This is the first one where it starts really enjoying itself a bit too much. Yeah. And it becomes like the cult of personality.
I wouldn't say too much. I think it starts enjoying itself.
Yeah, true. And I don't know. It's what else is it about? The cops think that it's Tommy who's killing everyone, but he's like, no, it's Jason. And the cop's daughter has like a crush on Tommy, and they sort of team up to try and take out Jason while avoiding the police, all while Jason is walking around killing camp counselors and horny teenagers.
Yeah. This is the other film, the only other film where he kills people at Camp Crystal Lake.
And I feel like...
And then how does it end?
The ending is great. The ending's a great fucking scene. It's the best part of the film. Essentially, Tommy lures Jason out into the lake while he's on a boat, and then while, flames are set around the boat, he chains a rock to Jason and kicks him down into the depths of Camp Crystal Lake, where he is anchored to the bottom from whence he came.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I thought the ending was cool. It's like,
And Tommy survives as well. It looks like he's not going to, but then he does.
yeah, true. Yeah.
And I love that, that Tommy, he survives the franchise completely.
Yeah. For now. Dun, dun, dun. And yeah, I thought the ending's cool, but I feel like this is the most misogynistic one. This one, I feel like, has a disproportionate. I might be wrong, but
elaborate.
I feel like it has a disproportionate amount of women getting killed in really sad and gruesome ways to men. I don't know. Like I said, I think it enjoys itself too much, and part of that is out of like dumb women in skimpy clothing getting killed in a way that feels very disingenuous. But maybe I'm wrong on that. But I feel like this is one of the least notable sequels.
Really?
Yeah, like the part 5 is the one that Jason's not in, and part 7 is
right. It doesn't have like a log line.
Yeah. It's just the most interesting thing about it is that he comes back from the dead, and then they essentially try and remake the first film, with that, But yeah, I don't know. This one I didn't.
I don't know. I think this is the fun one. It's the fourth wall breaking one. When Jason is revived, it like zooms into his eye, and you have him like walk in and profile, and then he turns to camera and throws his machete, a la James Bond.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I don't know, man. I enjoyed it the first time we watched it, didn't I? I thought this was great, but I don't know.
Yeah, this is probably still my favorite one. Or my second favorite one.
Really?
Second. Yeah, I love this one.
Okay.
This one's great.
All right. No comment.
I like to have fun.
And I hate it.
Okay, so this film. Like I said, this is the kind of the fun one. Takes itself not as seriously. It breaks the fourth wall. Explicitly, and Kevin Williamson ended up meeting Tom McLaughlin working on something, and he told him that Jason Lives was a massive influence on him growing up and actually inspired him to write Scream.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think this is Friday. This isn't Friday the 13th 2, but it's Friday the 13th 2.0. Like this is the real new beginning. Is this one?
Yeah. Yeah, the franchise goes because it introduces the supernatural Jason.
Yeah.
This is the first time Kane Hodder plays him, I believe.
The famous Jason.
No, actually, sorry, that's the next one.
Never mind.
Yeah, sorry about that. And yeah, although interestingly, this is the only film of the franchise that contains no nudity.
Well, colour me.
Misogynistic
myself. Well, I mean, again, that's the only requirement for misogyny, as it has nudity in it. I don't know. I thought that the part of the reason I'm having difficulty right now is we're at the all blurred into one phase of trying to recall 10 different movies I've watched over the last two weeks, and this is one of the least. This is one of the hardest to remember ones, I think. But you know what? It is fun. It is, and maybe I'm being too mean on it.
I think the final Tommy versus Jason is the second best scene in the franchise. And don't you worry.
Yep, I'll agree.
We will get to what the best scene in the franchise is. This also has a killer soundtrack from Alice Cooper.
Yes. Oh my God. I think. Okay. No, it is the best one. So there is a song that plays during the end credits of this song called "The Man Behind the Mask," and
he's back. Parentheses, the man behind the mask,
and it's so funny. It goes like, "He's back. He's the man behind the mask, and he's coming right out of his hole." Yeah, it's a very fun song, and I played it several times over the past week. Because it's just a fun
great,
song.
Man. It's like if you can't be bothered watching the movie, go listen to "He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask" by Alice Cooper, and you'll learn everything you need to know about this film.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like it's having fun, it's rock and roll, and it's bloody a bloody good time.
All right.
This film's a great time.
You've turned me round on it, Richard. You've turned me round.
This is the one. If someone was like, came over and they're like, I've never seen a Friday the 13th movie. Well, just chuck one on. This would probably be the one I put on.
That's
and
a
I'd be
good
like,
point.
this guy, he killed Jason, and then he was like haunted by visions of him, and that's all you need to know. And then let's take it from here.
Maybe I got too in that headspace of like taking it too seriously, and so seeing such a silly way of bringing him back to life, I was like, this undermines the sanctity of the series. But it's like, I don't actually care. The real truth is I don't care at all.
Yeah.
This is the second time on this podcast that you've actually changed my ranking. I'm going to go to my Letterboxd account right now and
also,
put 4
can
at
you
the top.
make that not private or whatever you need to do, because I cannot see it.
You can't see my list.
No, I can't. And I've been looking for it.
What? It's not private. Okay. Lists. It is private. When was it made private? Public list. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to move the part 4 to the top, and I'm going to move Jason Lives above A New Beginning, but no further.
Cool. And then once we've gone through all 10 films, we'll state our rankings, I think. Here we go. Now I can see it, you bloody cheeky dog. Okay. So, dumb IMDb trivia for Jason Lives. This is possibly my favorite dumb IMDb trivia we've ever had.
Oh my god. We've had some great ones.
Like, this is to the point where I almost remember saying this 4 years ago. So, while Tommy is being dragged away from the cemetery by the sheriff and deputy, he pleads with Martin the caretaker to dig Jason's grave back up, to which Martin says to himself, "What's he think I am, a fart head?" Now, other than the 2009 reboot, this is the only time in the Friday the 13th films that the word fart is spoken, and someone thought this was noteworthy. Now, I imagine if you go to the 2009 reboot's IMDb page, someone says that it's the second time, and then someone went back and was like, and some fucking idiot added this to 2009. But I tell you what, I looked up the screenplay to 2009 and Control F fart, and it wasn't there. So
You sure you didn't control
keep an
F
eye
art?
out for the word fart when we watch the 2009 reboot in a couple of weeks.
Did you look up the script for this one and see if fart was in this one, or if it was... Imagine if fart head was an improvised line from the actor. It sounds like one. What a strange thing to say, fart head.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Rotten Tomatoes body score. Body count. Rotten
What did you just
Tomatoes
say, Richard? You had...
Rotten Tomatoes score and body count. Which one's higher?
Which one's higher? The score is higher.
Yeah. What do you think it is?
It's 25.
No, it's not.
What is
You've got both of the numbers correct.
It's 52?
It is 52. It's the
That's
second highest in the franchise.
Very high. My goodness.
Yeah. Like, this is commonly, like, people like this one.
Maybe I was just tired, dude. Maybe I was over it.
The body count is the second highest we've had so far at 18.
Wow. That is the second highest we've had so far.
Yeah, it is. At 18.
At 18.
Okay. Moving on. Now we've got Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, 1988. So this is directed by John Carl Buechler. And what's this one about?
So the most interesting thing about this one is that the main character is a girl with psychic abilities. So imagine...
she's got psychokinetic powers.
Imagine that in a Friday the 13th movie. That's the pitch. That's the log line. When we first watched it, I was like, this is cool. This time, I was like, this is boring.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, she when it flashes back to when she's a little kid, and she accidentally kills her father by destroying a pier that he's standing on
In Camp
on
Crystal
the
Lake.
lake. Yeah, and then she goes back there and is like, I'm going to use my powers to revive my dad, but she revives someone else that was at the bottom of that lake. Our buddy Jason.
Oh.
And then, so she battles him. So, this is where we start to get into film studios because there's a lot of shit with the film studios with Friday the 13th. So, at this time, Friday the 13th was receiving diminishing returns as a franchise, whereas the popularity of A Nightmare on Elm Street was skyrocketing.
Right.
So Paramount Paramount who distributed Nightmare on Elm Street, Paramount who distributed Friday the 13th sought a partnership with New Line who have Nightmare because they wanted to do a crossover. So 1988 that was being talked about.
Wow.
And after a few failed attempts to work something out, they decided to do ostensibly Jason versus Carrie from Stephen King's Carrie. However, MGM had the rights to that book, so they were just like, let's just make it some other fucking psychokinetic bitch.
That's
I'm playing the studio executives. It's not me.
Okay.
So apparently, one of the concepts for Part 7 was conceived by associate producer Barbara Sachs. Was noted being similar to the plot of Jaws. This was when they were still trying to work out what they could do with the film. A corporate land developer would cover up the previous Jason Voorhees massacres in order to profitably build condos on Crystal Lake. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it is an interesting idea.
And then Sachs was then the Jason versus Carrie idea was brought to her. She considered that to be an interesting idea, and she wanted the installment to be, get this, more respectable than the previous entries in the series, and that she wanted it to be unlike any other Friday the 13th movie. She wanted it to win an Academy Award. Several high-profile directors were considered for the job, including Italian filmmaker Federico Fellini.
Wow. And who got it in the end?
John Carl Biechler. He's got a very difficult to look at last name. It's who actually he died last year. Unfortunately, R.I.P. And what did he also direct? Nothing very good.
Yeah, I don't think what a lofty goal, an Academy Award.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What? This is have some self-awareness. My God, you can try and make a good one. That's all good.
Remember when Vin Diesel legitimately thought that Furious 7 would win Best Picture?
Richard, I think about that every day. Man, and for this to not even, at least Furious 7 is probably the best Fast and Furious movie. This is one of the worst Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not very good. I find the character of Trish, what's her name? Tina. Trish. Tina. It's a T name. It's a T name. I know that much. The New Blood. And also, the New Blood was referring to, don't worry, Tommy's gone. Yeah, Tina, her name is. I found her so annoying, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, especially coming off the back of Tommy, who I found to be such an interesting protagonist for the series, because, we followed him for 3 movies, to then just go I have psychic powers, which is as far-fetched as the series has been up until now. It felt like a jumping the shark moment.
It is a jumping the shark moment, which I think I appreciated in 2016, because it was new spins and gimmicks. It's a gimmick, and gimmicks aren't always bad, and I think I interpreted that positively the first time I watched it. But do you know what the thing is unless you count her killing her dad by accident, her telekinetic powers aren't really utilized in a way that's remotely interesting. It ends with the way she defeats Jason in the end is she brings her dad back to life, and he drags Jason back down to the lake, and it's very ham-fisted and silly, and brings to light the kind of elephant in the room is all these other people have died around you, and you bring them back to life. If your power is you can bring people back to life, bring back all these other people to life.
Yeah. Ah, well. Yeah. So obviously after this film, we have Jason Takes Manhattan, which is, a famous entry in the franchise. But the director actually said that if ever given the opportunity, he would love to create Friday the 13th Part 7 Volume 2, which would ignore Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and would follow the characters featured in this movie. After they were rescued, Tina would be in a mental institution having been blamed for the deaths that occurred, and Jason would be stalking her, killing doctors and nurses along the way.
It just sounds like the one they already did 2 movies earlier.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, it's a fun idea. And
Yeah.
I like the idea of following a character for a couple of movies, at least.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about this one because it's like, yeah, it's just dumb.
It's like a
And like you say, the most interesting thing about it isn't important to it at all.
Yeah. And I mean, there's other teenagers that are camping there because she's there with her doctor and her mum to like face the trauma head on, which is the same thing that happened in 3, part 3 is that as well, and it's the irrelevant partygoers moving in the neighboring cabin, which is in part 4. So it's just like the same thing done again.
I guess we can just do Rotten Tomatoes body count. Which one's higher?
I'm going to say that the body count is lower. I think the Rotten Tomatoes score is higher.
Yeah, you're right. Rotten Tomatoes score is 35. What's the body count?
34.
16.
Wow.
Yeah, halve it.
Damn it!
Halve it and then also subtract 2 and then halve it.
Okay, I will.
This is the first appearance of Kane Hodder, who was considered, I guess, the
Why is the guy who's in the worst ones considered the definitive Jason? That's so strange.
Because he's the only person who played him more than once.
Right, well, there you go.
Dumb IMDb trivia, this is all the entry says. A number of the cast members were gay.
How many?
Don't know. A number.
Well,
1.
you'll probably find that on a lot of film sets.
Yeah. There was one, it might have been this one, where it was like, so-and-so developed a crush, an actual crush on their on-screen boyfriend. Unfortunately for her, he's gay in real life.
Very nice.
So next we have Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. That came out in 1989, directed by Rob Hedden. What's this one about?
Well, obviously, as the title would suggest, it takes place entirely in Manhattan.
No, you dumb fucking piece of shit.
What
AJ.
did I say? What'd I say? What did I do? No, look, it's Friday the 13th at sea. It takes place on a boat going, I guess, to Manhattan, and Jason kills a bunch of people on the boat before they do eventually get to Manhattan and dock.
Yeah.
And then...
And you know what? They were thinking about, what other gimmicks can we do? And they thought, what if he hides out on a cruise ship? Because they wanted him to get away from that fucking lake. What if he's hiding out on a cruise ship? And then someone thought, what if he's in New York? And they took both ideas to Paramount and said, which one do you want? And Paramount said yes.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they're two separate... You're blowing 2 movies on one movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's straight up what happened. Paramount said, yeah, cool, do both. And then they, after developing it more, they realized that they wouldn't be able to actually film the whole thing in New York because it was too expensive. So they actually shot in New York for like 2 days. The rest is in Vancouver, doubling for New York.
Of course.
But yeah, so the whole thing takes place on a boat, which starts in a lake and ends up in the Atlantic Ocean in New York.
Yeah.
Then he almost every New York cliche that you can think of. Someone they bust into a diner and go, "Oh crap, a man's trying to kill us," and they go, "Yeah, welcome to New York," which is a fantastic part of the movie.
What does he do? He walks past a bunch of street thugs and like kicks what are they holding? He like kicks it out of their hands or something.
Yeah. Something like that. And then there's all these barrels of toxic waste just like lying around.
And the main character has like premonitions of seeing young boy Jason, and they kind of have like a supernatural link to each other as he's killing everyone. And when they kill him by like escaping from him in the sewers as a big wave of sewage like takes him out, and when they look down after the waves surpassed, it's just the body of a little boy down there. And there's some interesting stuff in this. There's a flashback where the main character realizes her uncle, I think it is like the source of her trauma and fear of the water, because he threw her into Camp Crystal Lake when she was a young girl to try and teach her to swim, and she was dragged down by a young Jason, meaning he did survive, meaning that's the theory they describe too, is that he was there just breathing underwater. Okay, so a boy drowns in a lake, right?
Yeah, happens every day. Yep.
We later learn, plot twist, he didn't drown, but he also didn't get out of the lake, and he didn't do anything.
Or did he?
Or did he? Did he live in the lake? Part of this you can hardly blame on Jason, because if he didn't drown, he just decided to stay there. Like, do something about it.
Say you can't blame it on Jason because he didn't write the films.
But no, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying like it almost reduces the stakes. For Pamela Voorhees' plight to be legitimate, Jason has to have died. But the movies want Jason as the main villain, and so they go, no, he just didn't die, he was just hiding. And it's like, well, if he was hiding, then as the woman who played Pamela Voorhees herself pointed out, that like completely destroys her character motivation. But then also, how was he hiding? What do you mean he was hiding? If he couldn't swim, then he would have drowned, but he just didn't drown? Is he immortal? Is he indestructible? Maybe he is. That can be the answer. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I'm not here to answer that, mate. And all good theories, AJ. All good theories.
I think this is the worst one. I think this is the worst Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah, I think it's the second worst one.
Fair enough.
So this was the final film produced by Paramount.
Mm-hmm.
Who'd done all the ones up until then. Also, it's worth noting, so I mentioned about how there was two competing ideas that ended up both getting made. So this is after the disappointing box office gross of The New Blood. The director began developing a follow-up, which I mentioned about Tina in an insane asylum. Meanwhile, La Park Lincoln, who portrayed Tina, co-wrote with her husband an alternative screenplay, which had Tina working as a psychologist for troubled girls. Lincoln's co-star on The New Blood, Kevin Spirtus, also wrote a screenplay, which recast the events of The New Blood into a long dream with his character as the killer. And so it's like just three people were like, wrote a sequel to number 7 at the same time, and then none of them got used, which is bananas. But yeah, this is famously the worst one.
It's just disappointing, and it's like, if you'd called it Friday the 13th at sea, then it's like, cool. And because as sort of pointed out, is like you're selling each idea short by not committing to that. You know, because by calling it Jason Takes Manhattan, I'm immediately disappointed that we don't see Manhattan till the end of the film, because the implication of that,
minutes into the film.
Yeah.
This is also the longest one.
Wow, there you go. The implication of all of that is very interesting, because you go Jason to Manhattan, oh my god, he'll kill everyone. Right? So that's what you want to see. You want to see it take on that challenge, and it avoids it, and it's lame. It's fucking lame. And also when they get to Manhattan, it's because the ship's sinking, and they get on like a lifeboat, and the survivors get to Manhattan, and then they get out of the docks, and they sort of treat Manhattan like they've arrived on like a deserted island that's like dangerous, because they're walking around like, oh, where do we go? And then they immediately get accosted by thugs who take the main girl and then inject her with drugs, which is hardcore, man. That's a hardcore thing.
And also, like, people don't just give away their drugs like that.
It's very strange. It really, like, I believe that they couldn't film all of it in New York, because it's a very claustrophobic looking New York.
Yeah. There's like some shots in Times Square, and that's all that was shot in New York.
Yeah.
And Kane Hodder, God bless him, apparently he stayed in full costume the entire time, never lifted up his mask because people were getting a kick out of it.
Wow, that's cool. Because when Jason walks past those like street hooligans, those punks, and they like call something out, he just turns around and lifts up his mask, and they're like, "Oh, good, never mind." But also, we didn't mention this, but Jason is brought back to life once again through electricity. This is the second time he's brought back through electricity.
Yeah, good point.
He's not struck by lightning, but a anchor from a boat on Camp Crystal Lake disrupts like a power tube, which electrocutes Jason and brings him back.
Yeah.
So, that's fun.
And he's wet the entire movie.
As was I.
We haven't really talked about his design in much of these films, but I hate his design in Seven just because it creeps me out. Because he looks like he's been decaying, and so his ribs are showing and his spine is showing, and I just really don't like that.
No.
Yeah. It creeps me out.
How do you feel now?
And then this one,
now?
it's like his skin's cleared up a bit. He's
Right.
still like, very like dark, gross skin. But yeah, he's perpetually dripping wet.
Which is cool. That I feel like Jason should be perpetually dripping wet. If he was really the undead ghoul that they kind of don't want to say he is for the first 4 films, it would make sense for him to always be wet, as, keeping in tradition with ghosts who drowned, I guess, would make sense.
Yeah, I get you. I'm picking up what you've been doing.
Thank you. Give it back.
Baby. So, Rotten Tomatoes, body count. One of these is the highest it's been.
The Rotten Tomatoes score.
Yeah, you're right. It's 100.
Wow.
No, actually, one's the highest it's been. The other is the lowest.
Oh, so this is that fun idiosyncrasy.
Yeah, this isn't actually. It's not it's maybe not the highest, or it's maybe not the lowest in the franchise. But yeah, of course, the Rotten Tomatoes is the lowest we've had so far at 8, and the body count is 25.
Yep, that makes sense. A lot of deaths in this one. And
He's got an advantage when he's in such a secluded area.
Yeah.
Dumb IMDb trivia to cap off our discussion on Jason Takes Manhattan. And I actually mentioned this briefly already, but many of the actors pointed out to themselves a plot hole earlier in the filming of the movie. They wondered just how the ship got out of Crystal Lake and into the Atlantic Ocean. Since most of them were just happy to be in a film, they didn't bring it up to the producers or director.
That's so disappointing because it's worded in a way like it's going to answer the question.
Yeah.
But then there's like, anyway, no one knows the answer.
Okay, so yeah. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, 1993, the year both of us were born.
Thank you. Thank you for remembering.
So this was first produced in... this was the first film produced by New Line because Paramount sold the rights to Jason Voorhees after low box office receipts. But what is this about?
So this one is they kill him. They kill Jason. He's back somehow and they kill him. Because what happens at the end of Manhattan? Oh yeah, he turns into a little boy. So Jason's back for some reason and they kill him. They blow him up, but his heart survives. And while dissecting the heart, a coroner is possessed by this sluggy like slime that represents Jason. And the movie is essentially Jason's the like evil spirit.
It's like body snatchers.
Yeah, the evil spirit of Jason Voorhees. Possessing different people along the way until it's revealed that he has to possess the body of another Vorhees for him to come back as who he is, which I don't know how he knows that or why that is or whatever's going on. And it turns the main character ends up being Jason's niece, and they fight, and he ends up finding. Because he kills his sister, who's the niece's mum, he finds her body right at the last minute. And so he comes back as full Jason after an entire movie of not giving you the main reason you'd come to the movie, which would be the hockey mask and all that. He comes back and they fight and they manage to defeat him. And he gets dragged.
By stabbing him in the heart with a magical dagger.
Yeah, that's right. Very stupid. And he gets dragged to hell by demons. And the last thing we see in the film is the Jason's hockey mask in the sand, and it zooms on it, and then a hand comes out of the ground, and it's Freddy Krueger's hand, and he drags the mask down to hell, of course signifying that we will very soon be getting a Freddy vs. Jason movie.
Yeah. 9 years later. No, 10 years later, I think. Yeah, 10 years later. Also, this marks the only time in the franchise that Jason speaks.
I remember this. I remember this from the first time we did it. Yep.
Do you remember what he says?
He says, "Get your hands up" or something like that.
Yeah, very close. So there's a point where there's two people and you're not supposed to know which one is Jason, and they were like, "Fuck, we didn't know how to do it, so we just had to have because you have to hear both of them speak, and then to cast doubt that it could be either one." But yeah, a cop comes in and says, "Freeze! Get the hell away from me, Ed." And that's the only time in the franchise that Jason speaks, and it's universe breaking.
It sucks as well because it's like it's quite an intelligent thing for him to say. Like like I kind of like to think of Jason as like a methodical dumbass who's just murdering people.
Well, yeah, he's got one prime directive.
Yeah.
That's it.
Whereas that, like the fact that he uses the guy's name, the fact that it's in order to trick, is just real lame.
Yeah, but you can thank Adam Marcus, the director, for that. Adam Marcus, who was 23 when he made this film.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And it was first-time director, and apparently made every fucking mistake you could imagine.
How do you get this? What? I'm blown away by that. A 23-year-old director doing the ninth film in a series.
He had worked with Sean Cunningham on something else, and then he was like, yeah, fuck it, make the next one. But apparently there was some, I don't know if it was a first-time director thing or what, but no one watched the dailies other than the editor, and so they had to record like 40 minutes of the film because it was just filled with like shots were out of focus or like things didn't make sense or like because it was just some idiot that was fresh out of film school.
So there's one reason why I ranked this above Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah.
And it's because the opening scene is very fun and very clever. And I think it's one of the best scenes in the franchise, despite being in one of the worst.
It's deliberately like supposed to just feel like any old film.
Yep. So
like any old film in the franchise.
So it starts with a woman by herself going to Camp Crystal Lake, and it's very ominous, and she gets to a cabin and she draws herself a bath. She gets naked. You see her naked. You see nudity. And then something goes bump in the night. She puts on a towel and then is chased by Jason Voorhees through the forest, and you're like, oh my god, it's classic. It's all the classic tropes of a Friday the 13th movie, and then all these floodlights burst on and all these like soldiers come out and open fire on him, and it turns out she was a like a FBI agent or something who was undercover to lure him out. And I thought that was very, very clever and very funny, that the way to lure out Jason Voorhees is to get naked. Yeah. So that I think that's a very cool scene, and it's cooler than anything in Jason Takes Manhattan. Therefore, it's a bump above.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I could maybe listen to that. I just don't have as much fun with Jason Goes to Hell.
Oh, it's stupid. Why? What?
It's stupid. And also the design of Jason in this, I fucking hate. He's got this like disgusting bulbous head that like it overlaps his mask, and it's just like, I hate every time actual Jason is on screen.
Which is funny because that's also the main problem with it, is that he's not on screen.
Yeah.
But that's though so stupid. I don't get how you would get 9 movies deep and then go, let's do one where you don't see him. My dude, no one's coming to these movies.
You've tried it, and it failed by all accounts.
No one's coming to these movies for their like compelling stories. They're coming because they like the character and want to see the guy in the hockey mask. Like how fucking tone
the man
deaf
behind the mask. He's back. Also, so apparently this was Adam Marcus, little fresh-faced little teen. No, he's not a teen, 23-year-old. Wanted to have Tommy Jarvis reappear, but New Line only had the rights to Jason.
Interesting. Wow, okay.
Yeah. And also, we talked about this before, and I said I'd get to it later on, about the answer to all your questions, but this film features the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, from the Evil Dead.
Does it?
Yeah. Or the what's it also called? Like the Magnum Demonto or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Something Demonto. It's the book from the Evil Dead, which summons the Deadites. And so it is implied that Jason's a Deadite. And that solves all your plot holes.
What's a Deadite again? Remind me.
It's like the quote unquote zombies from the Evil Dead series.
So even
Doesn't matter who they are or what they are.
Right.
Naturum Demonto is the other thing it's called.
So Jason's just a zombie. He's always been a zombie.
Yeah, and so that's it's implied that Pamela Voorhees used the Necronomicon to bring Jason back to life, and that's why he's like supernatural, and he aged very quickly.
When the hell did this happen? I don't remember this happening in the movie at all.
It's there. Just gotta look for it.
Wow. Does that also explain why all of a sudden he's like an evil demon? And how that's never been part of it. Like, this is such a tone-deaf movie. It's actually staggering how bad the ideas are in this movie. That A, you don't have Jason on screen for very much of it, and B, that you make him a supernatural force when, like, is it not obvious that the allure is that he could be anyone? Like, he could be maybe there's someone living in the basement of your next door neighbor.
He could be your dad.
Yeah, he could be your dad. I guess that is what this one is, though, isn't it? It could be a dad. And maybe that is scarier, but no, I don't have to concede. No one likes this one. I don't have to look on the bright side.
Yep. So, Jason goes to hell. Rotten Tomatoes score and body count. Which one do you think is higher?
I think the body count is higher.
Yeah, and it's actually the highest we've had so far.
It is 30.
32, very good.
I nearly said 32.
And the Rotten Tomatoes score?
The score will be 9.
No, it's 24. It's actually quite decent. I mean, 24 is a bad score, but it's quite decent for what it is. I imagine it's got significantly less reviews than other ones, but
it's only 24 because that opening scene is real good.
All right, you ready for some dumb IMDb trivia?
Bro, it's all I want. It's all I want out of this podcast.
So I've actually got 2 for this one because I couldn't figure out which one was funnier. So this is all it says. Jessica mentions she left Steve by the Myers place. Now, presumably, it's supposed to say this could be a reference to Michael Myers, but it does not say that. And then it also the other one is the screenwriter, Kane Hodder, and even 2 random California DJs have cameos. Like the fact that
Kane Hodder has a cameo.
Yeah, Kane Hodder at the very start of the movie when there's the security guard at the morgue. One of them's Kane Hodder.
Oh, okay. Oh, so he literally has a cameo. They're not just saying the guy who plays Jason is in the film.
Yeah. No, but I love that. And even 2 random California DJs. Oh, geez, okay. So
is it a cameo if they're just obscure people and not famous? Like, can I say I have a cameo in Ash vs. the Evil Dead if I'm just an extra and I'm not famous?
I don't think you're in it, though, are you?
Yeah, you can't really see me. But
yeah,
you also can't really see the car in the background of that shot of Lord of the Rings. And people always say, people always point to the car. They go, there's a car in that shot. Can never see it.
Yeah, but they also removed the car from the shot.
Well, they removed me from Ash vs. the Evil Dead. I don't see how this is any different.
Okay. Now we're brought to 2002, Jason X.
Ugh, this will be so bad, won't it? I mean, we're already...
Yeah, I mean, this is famously the worst one. Just like Manhattan.
This is 2001, according to Letterboxd and my sources.
So it had 1 screening in 2001 and then was released over a year later. So thank you. Yeah, it had 1 screening in Spain in November of 2001 and then opened in everywhere else in 2002.
Richard, Friday the 13th, I was going to say joins, but it was already there. It becomes one of our franchises that genuinely has in-space sequel. Joining Hellraiser and Space Buddies, and there's got to be more. What other movies went to space in their sequels?
I don't know, man.
Anyway, so this is...
I know what you want from
this is Jason in space. It opens in 2010, I think.
Yeah.
which
That's
was
right.
long after it was shot, at Crystal Lake Research Facility,
Fantastic.
where a resurrected Jason is now like a specimen, a scientific marvel because he can't die, and some scientists are going to go do some experiments on him when he escapes and kills everyone except for the like main female scientist, who traps him in a cryogenic chamber, but then he stabs her and they sort of freeze together and are discovered 400 years later by
Over 400 years.
yeah, by a spaceship crew who return to a now desolate Earth. They bring them back aboard the ship. They thaw them both out and heal their wounds, and thinking that they're both like they'll both be like these fascinating fascinating discoveries. But then the girl who lives is like, oh no, you shouldn't have brought back Jason. And then Jason starts killing everybody on the spaceship, and it ends with them. After he's killed most of them, a couple of them get out on a escape pod, and this was it. That's Jason X. And dude, you know what? This movie fucking rocks. This movie's sick. This movie's great. I love this movie. I love Jason X. I think it's not it's not my favorite or anything, but like, if you allow it to be, I think it's the funnest of the sillier films.
Yeah. So
it's not unaware of what it is, I think. And when people talk about how bad Jason X is, because it's like, oh my god, it's Jason Voorhees in space. It's like, yeah, it fucking knows it's Jason Voorhees in space. Though.
Like I can't believe that you still like we'll see on Reddit someone mention, oh, is Friday the 13th any good? And people go, some of them are right. Jason X is fucking awful. And like I don't see how it still has that reputation. It seems like the postmodernist, meta-modernist, like society we live in would be able to appreciate that now.
And I think like watching it again, that was certainly how I remembered it. Watching it again, I was like, I think this still doesn't dive in too much, like enough. Like I think if it had looked like the fake trailer for Machete Kills in Space at the end of Machete?
Yeah.
I think if they'd gone with that aesthetic, like full-on, like, B-movie Star Trek kind of stuff, I think that would be better. They try to build too realistic of a sci-fi world. I think if they'd just gone absolutely schlocky and silly, this would have been a more fun movie. But even then, it's still fun. And yeah, as I said, it knows it's Jason in space. It's not unaware of the ridiculousness of that.
Yeah, it looks like a low-budget sci-fi TV show from the early 2000s.
It looks like Dawson's Creek.
It has such a specific aesthetic that's hard to describe. It looks like what I imagined the Battlestar Galactica show looked like.
I think they looked a lot better than this. This is more
probably.
This is like Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's I fucking love this movie, man. And watching it the first time, I was like, oh yeah, this is a good time. Watching it this time, I was like, this is the best fucking movie I've ever seen. The final chapter is a better movie, but Jason X is like right fucking behind it. This is such a good time watching. I love everything about it. Also fun, poorly placed, useless statistic.
Let's do it.
This is the furthest into the future we've seen on Film Franchise Fortnights.
That's awesome. Have we not had like a future set film yet?
This could be wrong, but I tried to do my research, and because the only other like super future film is Hellraiser Bloodlines, which is 2127, and this is 2455.
Is Divergent on Earth?
Oh, when does Divergent set?
That'd be the one that I would think of.
Because Divergent's just like the not too distant future. This could be right now, isn't it?
I don't know.
When is Divergent set? In the future. Thank you. Unknown. It's either the year 2020 or 2024, apparently.
Okay,
but then someone says, no, that's too soon. I'd say 2160. So it sounds like
right.
No one knows.
So another fun, useless statistic, if we're doing this now.
Yeah, go for it.
this is our second franchise this year to be about hockey.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah,
After the Mighty Ducks, it is funny to watch two franchises this close to each other, which have like their posters are the same. They've both got a hockey mask on the poster.
So in the development of Jason X, they were throwing around a bunch of different gimmicks. So they mentioned the hood,
No, like Leprechaun.
Snow, which I talked about last time as being my continuity of the franchise. Underwater.
Okay,
I'm expecting you to react to each of those.
like a submarine one.
I guess. Oh, submarine's cool.
I mean, you did the spaceship one.
Yeah. It's set in the Arctic.
Isn't that just the snow one?
Yeah. Number 9 actually was looked at as this as well, but Jason goes to LA.
Jason takes Los Angeles.
Yeah, and it would be about him fighting two rival gangs who then have to learn to team up and take down Jason.
That doesn't sound bad.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound good, but...
Doesn't sound worse. Doesn't sound worse.
Yeah. There was also Jason goes on safari. And also, an idea was tossed around at some point that involved NASCAR.
Wow.
In some way.
Do you think it would have gone, NASCAR, car?
Very, very funny. But ultimately, knowing that Freddy vs. Jason was on the way, they decided on space, knowing that if they set it in the future, it can be set after Freddy vs. Jason. I teased earlier that my favorite scene of the franchise, the best scene of the franchise, was still to come, and it's in this movie.
Yeah.
So, to distract Jason at the end of the film, they have this like VR holodeck on the Grendel, is what it's called. Named
The
after
Grendel? I missed that. The fucking Grendel.
They say it a lot of times.
The
That's the name of the
Grendel
spaceship.
sounds like the Grundle, which is a fun name for the gooch.
Well, it's not. Grendel, like Beowulf. It's from Beowulf.
Okay.
You know, the movie, Robert Zemeckis, Beowulf. That's what it's named after. They have this holodeck, and they need to distract Jason. And so what they do is they put him back at Camp Crystal Lake, and he's walking around, and they're like, fuck, it's working. And then one of the guys is like, oh shit, I think he saw me. We need to up the ante. So they get these two girls to go like, hey, Jason, come hang out with us. We were just gonna smoke some weed and have premarital sex. We love premarital sex. And then they both like just take their tops off.
Yeah.
And they're, revealing their naked breasts.
Oh!
and then get into these two sleeping bags, and then they're like, cool, it's working. And then it cuts back to Jason, and he's just like hitting one of the sleeping bags with the other sleeping bag, and it's the best scene of the franchise.
I agree.
It's so I don't know how people don't look to this as the undoubted greatest moment of the franchise.
Yeah.
Like the casting director and the director both didn't want to do this scene. And the casting director, in fact, was so adamant that it was nothing but gratuitous nudity that she refused to cast the roles.
That's the least gratuitous nudity in the whole franchise.
Well, like, it is gratuitous.
No, I know, but it's not.
Like,
the other ones are without purpose. Like, you could shoot the other nude scenes
right, yeah.
and not have nudity in them. It's only because of the fact that they're selling the film on sex.
To be fair, you could do this one without nudity, but it's like you're leaning on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually the director said, yeah, it is just nudity for nudity's sake. But the only way he could personally justify it is if they had fun with it and made it really silly.
I have never disagreed with an opinion I've heard of ever. It is not nudity for just nudity's sake. What are you talking about? Do you not understand the beat in your own film? Like, it's hanging a lampshade on it. It's satire. The nudity is crucial. Yeah. The other nudity wasn't.
That man, it's such a good scene. Like, you see if you can look it up on YouTube. It's so funny. But yeah, there are one other bit in this film. So there's, of course, it's very typical of there's this specific subgenre of film of like ethnically diverse crew of a space station get picked off one by one,
yeah,
and one of them is an android. And so there's KM, who's like the love bot of one of these characters, or implied to be, but then she's also like the cool badass who ends up killing Jason before he is reassembled with nanotechnology and becomes Uber Jason. She this is my favorite part of the film, other than the other one I said. I love this movie, man. So she comes out and she's all like dressed in like tight fucking leather and latex, and she's covered in like guns and magazines. And then the nerdy guy who works on her and go like, she walks out and he goes, "Yeah, I gave her an upload." And it's like, you mean upgrade, you fucking dumb shit. And don't be like, maybe he did mean upload. He uploaded this into it. No, he clearly is supposed to say upgrade.
And that's why it's the best Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah. But yeah, there's also the whole thing about how they're like on their way to Earth 2, and that's just what it's called. It's not like we're going to make a new planet, it's just Earth 2. And then we see a snapshot of Earth 2 at the end, and it just looks like Earth.
Well, that's why it's such a good Earth 2.
Yeah, mission accomplished.
I think one of my gripes with this film is that the main character, who's the girl who was frozen with Jason, is so unnecessary for the film. Why did she have to come back? Like, I like the character, I like the actress, but she should have just...
I ended up like quite liking her, so...
For sure, but she should just be on the ship. The fact that she is also from the past, like, doesn't really add anything. It doesn't really... They don't really use it in any interesting way.
Well, she's there to explain who Jason is.
I think you don't need to explain who Jason is. Well, I mean, they learn who Jason is through someone else anyway. The professor, because it's like a school.
But they don't take it seriously.
Yeah. But the spaceship is like a school or a university, and there's like a professor and a bunch of students. He is talking to his contact back on Earth 2, who tells him, when he says he's got someone named Jason Voorhees, he's like, wow, he'd be worth a lot of money. And that's the reason they don't discard of the body and immediately is because the professor wants to make a quick buck off it. But yeah, I don't know. I thought I liked the actress and I liked the character, but she should have just been a member of the crew. She didn't need to be also from the past.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, now, Rotten Tomatoes and body count. What are we thinking?
Well, the body count is potentially in the hundreds because they destroy a space station in it by flying the ship right through it, and there's presumably people on that space station.
So, I'm going to need a number, AJ.
150,000.
It's 19,757 plus 207 dogs, 17 cats, 4,713 angelfish, 3 gerbils, 14 rats, and 1 pony.
What? I wasn't too far off then. What's this? Is that what I guessed?
Well, you were very far off, but
wow,
you had the right train of thought. I've been holding on to this the whole fucking time, and then you were like, "Oh, fucking 100,000," and it just ruined it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is the worst thing you've ever done.
I'm sorry. I didn't do it to ruin the segment. I to be honest,
this is the only reason I wrote down the body counts was
Richard.
to have this fun reveal. The only reason I got you to guess what they were was so I could drop this
Richard,
fucking bombshell on you.
I'm sorry.
It's not good enough.
All
right, well, thanks for listening.
What's the the Rotten Tomatoes score? Is that 19,000 as well?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Rotten Tomatoes score is 20.
Yeah, what is?
All right, so that is Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it's kind of like the most interesting thing about Jason X is that it is a Friday the 13th movie. If it wasn't, I would be like, yes, it's 20%. If it was just a standalone space movie about people who accidentally revive a serial killer on their spaceship, the thing that makes it so good is the inherent insanity of it being a Friday the 13th.
It's all
movie.
the lore it's inherited.
Yeah.
Dumb IMDb trivia. This one. So there's one. The first death in the film, or like in the future anyway, is the lab technician, who of course is a sexy woman. Because all women are sexy, who are of age.
Yep.
Jason like grabs her head, dips it in liquid nitrogen until she freezes, and then smashes it on the counter.
I reckon that's my favorite death in the franchise. There's something about it that's so interesting to me. I love it.
Yeah, and it's horrific.
Yeah.
Because you see her face freeze. It's shot from under the water, under the liquid nitrogen. In 2010, Discovery Channel's Mythbusters actually tested out Jason X's liquid nitrogen head smash kill. It turns out it doesn't quite pass the smell test.
What does that mean?
It's like, oh, well, it works, but it smells real bad. So we're calling this one busted.
Sorry, I forgot we're in dumb IMDb trivia. Where half of these ones are dumb this episode because they don't give the most tantalizing, like they don't clarify the most tantalizing piece of information they're revealing.
Do you want me to see if I can find out what actually happened?
Because it's like there's a graph which shows how often people die in Friday the 13th Part 6 or Part 5.
Yeah.
Yep. There's doesn't pass the smell test. What does that mean?
Okay, so the myth statement is, and this is on just the Wikipedia page, a human head dipped into liquid nitrogen for 5 seconds can be shattered into pieces based on a scene from Jason X. For this test, Grant built a pan-hammer robot to simulate an object being smashed on the counter. 4 heads using a mold of Carrie's bust were then made. I think it means bust as in head and shoulders, not... Yeah, 3 made of ballistic gel, each with a skull and brain matter analog inside, and 1 completely made of ice. In the 2 control tests, the ice head shattered while the ballistic gel head in room temperature only had its front part broken. Test for the one dipped into liquid nitrogen showed a result seemingly in between the 2 control tests. Part of the head did shatter, but not completely. To achieve results shown in the film, the 3rd head had to be dipped into liquid nitrogen for 5 minutes to really simulate human flesh and bone. The myth was then retested using 2 pigs' heads. The head dipped for only 5 seconds merely had its snout flattened, while the one submerged for 15 minutes did not even shatter, completely busting the myth. In a related test not aired in the actual episode but shown on the Mythbusters website, Carrie made an ice sculpture of a pig's head. The pan hammer only broke off the snout of the ice head. The rest of the head was shattered after it fell off the table. So that is busted.
It's very grim for Mythbusters. Did they show the scene happening?
I don't know. I feel like you can't.
Yeah. Well, I'm not familiar enough
graphic
with Mythbusters to remember if they were like that graphic or that gruesome or not. Even describing the scene feels like it's too gruesome.
Yeah.
Well, guess that myth in itself is busted.
Yeah, the myth of Mythbusters being graphic. Okay, so we talk about titles a lot on this podcast. This is a segment because we talk about titles a lot on this podcast that we decided to name. We talk about titles a lot on this podcast.
All right.
So the original film was tentatively titled A Long Night at Camp Blood.
Yeah.
And then Sean Cunningham came out with the Friday the 13th title and took out that ad in Variety, and then the Victor Miller, I believe his name is, had to rewrite the film around that.
So that should have been the title. Or at least...
A Long Night at Camp Blood.
Or Camp Blood should have been the title.
Really? I think Friday the 13th is a great title.
No, it's not. It's terrible. It's got nothing to do... It barely has anything to do with the first film. And they clearly get to the point where they don't even want to talk about it because the sequels are just called Jason da-da-da-da-da. And the last one's only called Jason X, doesn't even have Friday the 13th in the title.
Well, do you want to know why that is?
Why?
Because after Paramount sold the character of Jason to New Line, they didn't sell the fucking franchise rights. Like, they don't... New Line only owns Jason Voorhees. They don't own Friday the 13th.
Right.
So they can't call their films Friday the 13th. So that's why Jason, the Final Friday, and then Jason X. That's why.
Wow, okay, interesting. Yeah. Well, I still think that I was going to try to be real clever and come up with alternate titles for all of them until I realized I probably didn't have to.
10 of them.
Because they would just be the same subtitle. But I got as far as like thinking like the first one should be Camp Blood. Or because that's the nickname they give the camp, it should be A Long Night at Camp Blood or whatever, and then the second one would be like Across from Camp Blood, and the third one's like a house near Camp Blood, like, and keep that as like the common DNA between the titles.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't think that far ahead of it, but I don't know.
I like what you're doing with the titles, but I don't like the titles.
Sure.
I don't like A Long Night at Camp Blood.
No, that's fine.
I don't think it has any longevity, despite the word "long" in its title.
I think Camp Blood does. If they just called it Camp Blood, that sounds like a Goosebumps book. Like it's
Well, then it'll just be Camp Blood 2. And
You're right. Yes.
And you'd have this. It'll be the exact same thing. It'll be Camp Blood Part 3 in 3D. Camp Blood 4, the final chapter.
I still think Camp Blood has more to do with what the series is about than calling it Friday the 13th. It is. They never talk about it being Friday the 13th. It is so far
half
removed.
the time it isn't.
Half the time it isn't. It is so far removed from the like subject matter, and it pisses me off. And I feel pretty similar about A Nightmare on Elm Street, to be honest. So we'll tease it for next week. But I just think that they shouldn't be called Friday the 13th. It's not. I mean, unless we talked before about how the anthology idea of doing different horror movies set on Friday the 13th, then it's like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Same with Halloween. It's like, yeah. Just set them on the date that they're saying. It annoys me because it's so, and like they using like the final Friday and stuff. It's like the final Friday. It's not even necessarily a Friday, let alone one day of the week. I don't know. I think they're bad titles.
Right. Well, a couple of alternate titles. The third draft of Part 2 was actually just called Jason.
Oh, yeah.
And then a couple of alternate subtitles. So The New Blood was originally called Friday the 13th, Part 7, Jason's Destroyer.
Yuck. What a bad title.
And 9 was originally called Friday the 13th, Part 9, The Dark Heart of Jason Voorhees.
I remember that one from last time we discussed it. Yeah. I mean, it's maybe a better title than naming your film after the last thing that happens in it. It's kind of a spoiler to call it Jason Goes to Hell. But then it makes the same mistake as Jason Takes Manhattan, where it's like, you kind of want it, you go, oh my god, he goes to hell, he'll kill everyone. He'll kill every demon. And then you don't even see Jason in hell. That's insane that you'd call the movie that, and then you don't even see him in hell.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to say about Jason or Friday the 13th?
No.
Okay. Continue the franchise. So there's a shitload of books, comics, fan films. One fan film I was reading about, Never Hike Alone, which has this guy go hiking, and then he's alone, and then Jason shows up, and then he's in an ambulance, and then there's a pounding on the door of the ambulance, and you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen? And then the doors fling open, and a paramedic, played by Tom Matthews, who played Tommy Jarvis in Jason Lives, appears, and he's wearing a jumpsuit that says Tommy Jarvis on it. So they got him back for a fan film, which is pretty cool. And then, so that came out in 2017, and then they announced like a prequel and 3 sequels to it last year. So I guess they're making more of these Never Hike Alone movies. But maybe like fan films could be something fun to cover for film franchise follow-ups, or even an off-week episode. The fun world of fan films. Like if we find some of the best ones. Because this Never Hike Alone's only like 50 minutes long.
Film franchise Fortnights fan film Fridays.
Jesus.
There's too many Fs.
Yeah. So also famously, there's a game that came out in 2017, which is supposed to be very good. It was originally multiplayer only, but I believe they added a single player mode. So you play online, and one person is randomly assigned to be Jason, and then everyone else, has to try and escape Jason while Jason is trying to kill everyone.
Do you reckon you can unlock different skins in it?
Yeah, you can.
Can you be hooded Jason?
I believe so, yes. You can also be an unmasked version of Jason from 9, which never happens in the film.
Wow, can you be Uber Jason?
Do you want me to look these?
You better be able to be Uber Jason. I feel like the different suits are almost, it's like the same as like Star Wars, how they're designed to sell toys. It's like, it feels almost designed to be different unlockable skins in a video game.
Yeah. Okay, here we go, actually. This leads me into my next point. You can't play as Uber Jason.
Oh.
Because, in mid-2018, all future additional content to the game had to be put on hold. So Uber Jason had been announced to be coming to the game and is now not happening because of a massive fucking legal dispute going on, which is why we haven't had any films since 2009. 2010, the 2010s being the only decade not to have a Friday the 13th movie.
Since the dawn of time.
There's a big legal dispute between Sean S. Cunningham and Victor Miller over who owns the rights to the franchise. So Sean S. Cunningham directed the original film and Victor Miller wrote it. And there's a quirk of US copyright law, apparently, and I just learned about this, that the original author of a given work has the right to revoke a copyright agreement after 35 years.
Interesting.
So he can say, no, after it takes 35 years, but he can go, no, I wrote it, it's mine. And so Cunningham's argument was that Miller was just a gun for hire, and so due to the applicable laws, he is just it would belong to his employer, who was Sean Cunningham. And then it led to a massive court case, which Miller actually won. And then Cunningham overturned the judgment on appeal, and then that appeal hit some bumps. And then the most recent information I could find about it is that the next hearing was scheduled to be held on February 10th, 2020. I'm guessing because of coronavirus and everything, this hasn't really happened. We haven't had any more information about it. But last year or the year before, the estimation was that we should have some kind of verdict in June of 2020. Which is this month. So, who knows? But at the moment, if you want a new Friday the 13th movie, all you can do is sit and wait. Yeah.
There was a TV show as well, wasn't there?
There is a TV show, yeah, and it has 72 episodes. It ran for 3 seasons.
What the hell? What's it about?
I think it's like the anthology. Actually, I read about it today. It's a series about an antique shop, and they try to recover each episode is them trying to recover a different cursed antique and put it back into the vault at their store.
What?
It seems to have nothing to originally the series was to be titled The 13th Hour, but they thought it would turn away viewers, so they took the name Friday the 13th to deliberately draw in audiences. Despite this title, the series has no story connections to the film, as Jason Voorhees does not make an appearance, nor does any character connect to the films, although a few cast and crew do crossover. The biggest one would be John Shepherd, who played Tommy Jarvis in A New Beginning, is guest stars in one episode, and also David Cronenberg, the director who plays a detective at the start of Jason X, directed one of these episodes.
That is one of the loosest connections I've ever heard between a film and its TV shows.
The name, that's it.
Yeah, nice.
Although Freddy's Nightmares was another series, and that actually seems to be related in that Freddy Krueger appears in it.
Yeah. Nice.
So, we're just waiting at the moment for anything related to Friday the 13th because there's essentially a freeze on making anything at the moment. Although in 2018, October, LeBron James was in talks to co-produce the next film with his production company, who has Space Jam 2 about to come out. A prequel screenplay called Friday the 13th: The Beginning was reported as being written. Tom McLaughlin, he authored a spec script for a sequel film titled Jason Never Dies, and you might remember him from directing Jason Lives, and he confirmed that script he wrote would have served as a direct sequel to Jason Lives, ignoring all other films in the franchise. So this was announced last year, July 2019. So this was in the midst of all the ignoring previous sequels.
True.
Things.
Yeah. Jason Lives. There's a sequel called Jason Never Dies. That's very fun.
Yeah. So time to continue their franchise. Have you prepared anything?
I guess I would just be very interested to see sort of what I was talking about 2.5 hours ago, at the start of the episode. If they made one now, I wonder if they would buckle to the storytelling,
The SJWs.
expectations of what?
The SJWs.
No, not at all. Like, would the next Friday the 13th movie in the 2020s be something more like, be something deeper that is like It Follows or Get Out,
The Invisible Man.
You know, would they do that? Would they give the main characters a character arc that maybe Jason represents the grief in their life?
Even like Halloween 2018, like something. I mean, that's not necessarily like about something. Although I guess it's about like PTSD and things like that. But just even something of that caliber. Like if we get something like Leatherface, which was like a direct-to-video sequel, it's like it'll just be an excuse to see titties and blood. Whereas like even though actually, to be fair, Leatherface did try and do something interesting, but I would. I'd like to see a return to the big screen, big budget, and with one of the kind of someone that grew up with it, who's now like a respected filmmaker.
Would you want to see it try tackle deeper themes or stay classic?
I think you can find the balance, but like Halloween 2018 did.
Because if it didn't, people wouldn't be too kind to it. I don't think it would be a very popular movie.
Yeah. Well, anyway, also speaking of continue the franchise, there is a reboot of the franchise, and that was
which we'll cover in a couple of weeks.
Which cover in a couple of weeks, and so also there was like talks of sequels to that, which we'll cover when we get to it. So my continue the franchise is a sequel that ignores previous sequels. However, it picks up after number 4. And so you have Tommy Jarvis, who had this traumatic experience when he was a kid. And then, it's just it's a Friday the 13th movie. Also, the next Friday the 13th will be the 13th Friday the 13th. So that was kind of like, it was talked about for a while being like Friday the 13th, part 13. It was going to be like a big revitalization of the franchise, but obviously we've been waiting for that. But yeah, I was trying to think, like Jeremy Renner as Tommy Jarvis.
Oh, so you wouldn't bring Corey Feldman back?
No, I would not. I was looking at actors who are around the right age, and I thought Jeremy Renner kind of looks more like an aged up John Shepherd than Corey Feldman, but yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could David Tennant, he's the same age. Always cast him in my sequels when I need someone of a specific age.
David Tennant looks like Corey Feldman.
I don't think he does in the slightest, but...
What? Okay. Yeah, no, I could see that.
All right.
What about a Jordan Peele style? Do you think, because he's producing Candyman, he's obviously done Get Out and Us. Do you think that something like that would be fun to see through Friday the 13th?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you want the new auteurs of horror to come aboard.
Take like another comedy guy like Jordan Peele or Danny McBride to revitalize a franchise. Keegan-Michael Key. Jim
Parsons.
Ooh.
Jim Parsons, the Friday the 13th. That's his
He's not like a creative voice though.
I know. I was trying to think of a bad example of,
right.
Like someone who I wouldn't want to see.
Yeah, who's a good Michael Schur. Michael Schur's Friday the 13th.
Bo Burnham's Friday the 13th.
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah.
I mean, he did teenagers with 8th grade.
Yeah, fuck
Just
it. Yeah,
take,
Bo Burnham's
take that
Friday the 13th, which ignores everything after 4.
Ignores everything after 1, so Jason's just still dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about doing that where it was like like it only 1, 3, 4, 7, and 9 are canon. Like
make it so 4 is not canon, therefore
But 5 is.
But 5 is, meaning that something happened to Tommy Jarvis, but it wasn't what you saw in 4.
All right. Well, thank you if you have listened all the way through this this podcast. AJ, I'm deliberately missing out the rank that franchise as we have not finished this franchise yet.
Okay,
and
we've all actually technically ranked it, but we
have already
need
ranked
to
it, but
re-rank
we haven't gone through all the movies, so it's not time to re-rank it, or if it needs re-ranking.
Okay.
Okay. So
Well,
thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, we don't have franchise roulette to do, so all that's left to say is please consider
Catch us in 7 days.
Yeah, please consider subscribing to Cult Popture on all the different places. We have a YouTube account. We have 2 YouTube accounts, one for the podcast, one for video essays that we do. We have Acast, and we're on Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts and iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're on Stitcher. We're all over the place. And you can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Cult Popture, or you can email us at cultpopturemedia@gmail.com and join our Discord as well, where you can chat with us and fans of and other listeners of the show, and the Patreon if you want to support the show, patreon.com/cultpopture. But beyond that, Richard, I feel so good to have given Friday the 13th the 3 hours it deserves, as opposed to what we did last time, which was briefly ruin our fortnight of our lives by watching all those movies. Last time we did this, we watched 6 movies in one day.
You watched 14 in one weekend, which
was horrific.
is horrible timing. Over a 2-week period, we watched, and then we fucking we finished watching them at 4 a.m.
It was a bad time. So we've grown up and matured, and that is evidenced by our when we decided to watch them now. And I think this is the difference between 23-year-old Richard and AJ and 27/26-year-old Richard and AJ.
Now we would feel confident to direct the 9th film in a long-running horror franchise.
Yeah. I am 27 in under 20 days though, so maybe I should have just acknowledged that.
If you want.
Anyway, hey, tune in next week, guys, for Friday God, I'm fucking sleepy. For Nightmare on Elm Street. Are you looking forward to Nightmare on Elm Street?
I am. I'm actually going to go watch it right now because there's 7 movies and we have 7 days and we have to be fucking right back here.
Yeah, I might go do the exact same thing, man. So I'll see you on the other side, buddy.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Bye. All right, welcome along to our post-credit scene. Wasn't that a funny episode that we just did, Richard?
Yes, it was very funny.
I agree with that statement.
The funniest.
One of the funniest, and frankly, I think most poignant episodes we've ever done. Welcome to the post-credit scene sequence. It's just the post-credit scene. I don't need to say sequence. This is a sequence, though, that is brought to you by our patrons over at www.patreon.com/cultpopture, where if you donate $5 or more per month, then you get to submit a fun little topic for us to have in a quick little chat in this the dying embers of an episode, where we'll talk about whatever
when
you want.
only the truest of fans remain.
Yeah. So today's post-credit sequence comes to us from Cam H, and he says, "Hey guys, thanks for letting me know." Presumably that he can submit a post-credit scene is what he's talking about there. Well, I went to New Zealand for a month a long time ago, and to this day it is one of my favourite places in the world. Thank you so much, Cam. As I've grown into an adult and seen the world around me, it's become one of my favourite places too, despite having not really ventured anywhere else. So his question is, what's your favourite place to go for a trip or vacation in New Zealand? It's an amazing country and the people are great as well. Thank you so much. Richard, what do you think?
Well, one place, I really like Rotorua. Been there a couple of times. It's a very, very cool place. It's very touristy. And I guess a lot of these places are touristy. But I actually haven't, because I live in Auckland now and I used to live in Christchurch where you live, and I haven't really explored around Auckland as much as I did with Christchurch, but in Christchurch there's a place just it's an hour and a half north called Hammer Springs, and it's like baby's first holiday. It's very everyone who is
lives in Christchurch has been there multiple times, and anyone
Hundreds,
outside of
100
Christchurch
times.
has never heard of it.
Yeah.
And so having been there, once or twice a year, every year when growing up, it was cool. Like, having now lived in Auckland for 5 years, I went back down to Christchurch over Christmas and went up to Hamner Springs with some friends for a night, and it was great fun. It was cool. There's a sense of nostalgia for it. It's essentially just like a strip, like, that has a hill at one end that you can climb in about half an hour, and some hot springs at the other end, and there's like mini golf in between.
Yeah. No, I have similar experiences with Hamner Springs, only that I do not like going there because I'm not actually a big fan of hot springs or hot pools. And when you take that out of it, it's a big hill I don't want to climb. Mini golf, which is my least favorite recreational activity.
What about bowling?
Climbing hills and hot springs. Yeah, I don't like bowling either. I just don't like doing any things. And when you take this thing out of it, it's just a strip, which I find bogus. My one fun memory of Hamner that I have is there's a saying around these parts where you go, there's no ham in Hamner because it's spelt Hanmer, not Hamner, as its oft pronunciation would suggest.
That's so interesting you say there's a saying around these parts, because that's something I came up with and have never heard. I came up with that on my own, and I've never heard anyone else say it out loud. And I don't even know if I've ever said it out loud, but I've always thought that when I've had to spell hammer.
Maybe you invented it and it caught on.
Mm.
Anyway,
but yeah,
one day
I've never heard that expression, but it's something I always think about.
One day when I was in Hamner, I went to the supermarket and took a photo of the ham and was like, found ham in Hamner.
Nice.
And everyone liked it and it was a good time. My favourite place to go in New Zealand is Lake Taupō, which is on the way from Christchurch to Auckland, was where I've been when I've been there. And if you look at New Zealand, the North Island of New Zealand, and you see that big lake in the middle of the North Island, that's Taupō. Very cool place, very cool vibes in that little city. There's a McDonald's.
Talking about like if you're driving from Christchurch or Wellington to Auckland, Taupō is it's the slightly longer route. Depends how you're going for time, and it's like because there's two ways you can go, and going via Taupō takes like an extra half an hour or an hour. So I've been there once, but I didn't go the second time I did the drive.
Right. Well, there's a McDonald's there with a out of service plane that's been built into the playground, like a full on airliner. It's weird, but it's cool. And when I went, the lake is great to swim in as well because it's fresh water, but it's got it feels like a beach, but you don't feel gross after swimming in it because it's not salt water. When I first went there, we were looking for a place to stay the night there, and we ended up going up this weird little dusty trail and found this Old West style saloon, and they had a sort of a bunch of houses that looked like out of the 1950s where you could stay, and I loved it. I thought it was so cool, and now whenever people ask me where are my favourite places in New Zealand, I always say Taupō because of the Old West 1950s Stepford Wives saloon. And I think one of our listeners actually went there recently, but based off my recommendation. So
very cool.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I have my favourite places to go are usually very specific. There's a little cabin that we've stayed in a few times. And things like that. It's those are, and I associate memories more with super, super specific Airbnbs.
And just before Taupō, there's a place colloquially called Desert Road, which is New Zealand's only thing resembling a desert. So that was very fun to explore and take cool photos in.
Yeah, it looks like nothing else in the country.
Yeah, it's cool.